My name is Dale, and I want to welcome you to my YouTube channel, Observer of Anomalous Objects. And I want to tell you how much I appreciate you being here. If you haven't done it already, let me go ahead and encourage you to subscribe. There's a lot of great videos on this channel already, and this one will be as well. And so I want to go ahead and start by bringing in my co-host at this time. This is Rob Heatherly. I think Rob and I have done 4 other episodes so far. And then for the second time, I want to bring on special guest Mario Woods. And finally, the Nordic Queen, Anna, all the way from Australia. All right. Pretty exciting, but it was kind of hard to get this all together because we got people in 4 different time zones. But you know what? We pulled it off. You know, that was a great thing. Anyway, so welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Welcome, everyone. I want to thank you for being on the show. Anna, just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go ahead and move into your story as far as your event. So, why don't you go ahead and just tell us just as much as you're comfortable with, anyway.
In regards to the story, incident, I should say, because it's not a story,
just about you. You live in Australia. Just give people an idea of who you are as a person.
Okay, so mind you, I'm a bit nervous, guys, so bear with me. This is the first time I've done anything like this.
Yeah, just take it easy, really.
I want to say relax. It's all good. We're all friends here.
Hey, let me say this. Let's do that. Can we go back just for a second? You did the time thing. I'm on the eastern seaboard of the United States, and right now it is 7 p.m. So, Rob, say where you're from.
All the way down here in Australia it's actually 9 a.m.
Exactly. I mean, I just thought it'd be great to have this on a video to say that. From 4 time zones, it's pretty unique.
It's 9 a.m. Not Friday, but Saturday.
No. It's Saturday morning for us.
Yeah, we're all on Friday.
Yeah, it's 6 p.m. Central for me in the Ozarks.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
And
wow.
Dale,
And I'm in God's country over here in beautiful Oregon, and it is 4:01 right here.
that's
So-
cool.
Oh, wow.
But it's
That's
great. I
amazing.
really enjoy having a bunch of guests on. But anyway, not to put any pressure on you. You're with friends, and that's what we have to remember when we do these events. The audience, just let them know basically, where you're from. Maybe a couple things that you like, and then we can move on and start talking about the events that you have experienced in your life. And I'll have some questions to help guide you with that to make it a little bit easier.
Perfect. Well, we'll start off by saying my name's Anna, and I'm all the way from AARO in Melbourne, Australia. Throughout my whole life, I've had a lot of experiences. The most vivid ones I could actually count as 3. What else can I say? Sorry, guys. I'm actually a candle artist. Now, when we speak of candles, I don't mean little candles. I actually make large candle centerpieces, and that's what I do for a living. I also do read tarot cards, so that's been with me since I was about probably 12 years old. So just a little bit.
There's a unique story about that. It really is. Very nice.
Well, let's start with I want to begin in a certain place, and then we can go back and forth from that. But I want you to think about the first UFO encounter event that you were aware of, and assuming there's more than one. I haven't completely heard your story, but what was the first one where you were awake, or it was some way that you just, it wasn't something that you remembered later, but it was an event that you remembered at the time? When was that? How old were you? Where were you at?
Well, okay, so this one probably would have been around 1995. We're actually awake, and there was a little joke in a neighbourhood of a friend's house that we used to always go and visit, that a large UFO will actually show up over a cricket field. So I thought, back then, oh, come on, please, it can't be real. Let's go and have a look. And it was probably about 11 o'clock at night, and I think it was about 5 of us. We all got in the car, went down to the actual cricket pitch. So we're all looking up at the sky, and I'm like, there is nothing here. Like, I'm thinking everyone's a bunch of loonies by this point, So I'm standing there and I thought, okay, let's give this a go. And I said, if you're out there, come on, show up. And of course, there was nothing. And I'm like looking at everyone going, Jesus, this is a nice joke, yeah? Like it's not funny at this point. And I thought, everyone's like, no, just wait, it will show up, And I thought, all right, I'll give it another go. And I said, once again, I said, okay, well, look, I'm going to leave. If you don't show up, we're going. And I swear the next thing I seen out into the distance, now I'm not sure how to describe a cricket pitch oval. It's quite big, if you know what I mean by a cricket pitch oval, where you play football or...
Right, like a football field, but for cricket instead.
Yeah. So quite large. So I look over to my left up at the sky and I see these lights and they're quite far away. And you could make out the colours that they were blue, green, red and yellow. And at this point, I'm staring at it. Everyone's staring at it. And I said to myself, well, you're a bit far. Can you come closer? The next thing I knew, this thing just came out of nowhere. And I mean within a blink of an eye, literally hovering over us.
Wow. What was its size?
And
that big, huh? God. Yeah.
It was very, very big. It would have been maybe not half the size of the cricket oval. It was,
sure,
but it was big enough. It was big enough.
80,
and it was silent.
80, 100 feet across, and it sounds like kind of 50 to 80 feet across.
Ooh.
He's wondering how.
I suppose you could say that. Yeah.
Okay.
So
now,
it was.
I'm no good at metric.
Silent.
Yeah.
I can't hear you very well.
No, I was trying to
Rob very well.
I don't know what size the oval was that you played on, so I was trying to get a gauge of if it was comparable to a football field, maybe, or soccer
Think
field.
of a large stadium. That's maybe my best way to describe it to you guys.
It would be like a football.
Large stadiums.
Yeah, like a football stadium in America.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, cricket stadium would be like that.
So when you saw this, what did the object look like? Was it a flying saucer? Because we've learned that UFOs come in all shapes and forms.
Yeah, it was definitely a saucer shape. And the best way I could describe it, probably for others that are in this field and understand, would be, and I'm not sure if you're aware, Dale, but the Westall incident at one of the schools in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what it looked like. There was no difference to it whatsoever.
Wow. Yeah, that was an amazing story.
And then it started, that's just...
Can I ask a question?
So oh, yes, you can, of course.
How far do you live? The Pine Gap has been in Australia for many years. I don't know the exact date that it, came online, as you would call it, but or commissioned.
Yep.
But there's a lot that happens in Australia that happens around Pine Gap. And for some reason,
Pine Gap is so far away from us. It's right up north.
And so how many miles? Was that 1,000 miles? Is it 1,500 miles? Is it? I mean, I don't know the language of Australia, but
maybe just over maybe 1,000.
Maybe 1,000.
So
it's further north. Okay. I think one time we were talking about weather one time, you and I, and texting about it, and you said you had an Arctic front that came through, and you get our Antarctic front, and that is so strange for people in North America to hear that.
Yeah.
When you're talking with someone, I was like, wow, I thought, what's that like? Because you're right there at Antarctica, one of the most interesting places on this planet that I would love to go there, regardless of
I think we would all love to go to Antarctica.
Yeah. But there's something about Pine Gap, like I said, and so that happened to you in 95, right?
That happened in 95, yeah.
Okay.
So Westall in 95.
Westall was in the 1960s, wasn't it?
That's correct. Yeah.
Somewhere in there. Yeah, I'm part of a Facebook group for Westall and stuff.
Fantastic.
Not a ton of activity on it, but I've actually invited a couple of the witnesses to come on. They're older now, obviously, but I haven't heard back. But anyway, I'm a part of that Facebook group. Would love to have them gone. So you saw this flying saucer. How far was it off the ground when you looked up at it?
Well, it was nowhere near the ground. It was above our heads, literally.
Right. But how far up off the ground?
Yeah, it was off the ground. So at this point, I think we were all frozen. We didn't know what to say because I think it just looked very majestic and breathtaking. That's the best way I could describe it. And then it was communicating through telepathy because none of us were speaking at all. And, and then we're like, oh, I was more like, well, let's show me what you can do. And it literally started just flying in all different directions and it would come back, but within a blink of an eye. That's the best way I can describe it.
How many people were there?
Was it? I'm
There
sorry,
was
Rob.
4 of us.
Yeah, there are 4 of you, so 4 witnesses. That's important. So after you saw it in the air, let's follow that and see. Did it ever land, or was it just something you all saw? And the other question I had for you is: you said it was communicating telepathy, or at least it was reading your minds and what you were telling it to do. Did it have any message for you guys, the 4 of you?
No messages whatsoever. Yeah. It was almost like it was showcasing.
Right.
So it was whatever it was reading what we were thinking, or obviously
it was reacting.
Maybe what I was thinking. I can't speak for the other 3 because they weren't talking, but it was just showing its majestic display.
Okay. Well, one of my questions, and we can continue this, but what were your first thoughts? I mean, you said you didn't. Did you really believe in them before? You say you really kind of seemed like, hey, they're playing a joke on me, or this isn't real. Were you kind of a person that was open to it, or not open to it before?
Well, I've always been open spiritually, and I've always thought that there was something more out there, but never dwelled into it. And like I said before, before we started, I'm not into science or science fiction. Actually, science fiction is one of my subjects I don't like. I don't like any science fiction movies or whatsoever. But I thought it was a joke, but it was rumored around that area, and I'm currently trying to find people around that area that have actually seen it, because it's apparently if you go to this football field, it will show up.
That's pretty amazing. So what happened? You said it was in the sky, and the 4 of you saw it. It was doing maneuvers. The way you described it, it's like you couldn't explain it with prosaic because it was going so fast. And not only was it that fast, but silent. It was something that responded to your thinking.
Wow.
And you thought you wanted to do something. It would actually, you did whatever you asked it to do in your mind.
Yes, that's exactly what happened.
Right. Did you guys come up with yourself, or is just something told you to think with your mind instead of with your words? Someone might have that question. How did you go from, maybe telling it to do something with words to basically knowing to communicate with your mind? I'm just curious about that.
I think at that point, your mind just works. I think it connects.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best way I can describe it, is because, we didn't talk about it beforehand. I thought it was an actual joke.
Right.
So I think when it showed up, we were all just shocked, and I heard no one else speak.
Prove it to me.
Yeah.
You're being skeptical of it, so you're incredulous. You're basically doubting. Okay, am I really seeing what I'm seeing? Prove it. What I'm seeing is actually taking place,
right?
And that's a natural response.
So the other 3 people, how did they receive it? I'll get to that a little bit more on your response, but what did the other 3? Did they automatically? I think you said it already, but I want to clarify. They also were telling it what to do with their minds, or were they just in awe of the experience?
To be honest, I think they were in awe of the experience, and that we all actually saw it. And once it had sped off and left, it was sort of like we're still looking around. There was nothing there, and I remember the 3 others going, "Let's get the hell out of here, quick!" Like, I think they were scared. We never spoke about it after that at all.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So you saw the same UFO, but you had different takes on it, in a sense of how you experienced it, in a sense, because it didn't scare you that way, did it?
No.
Where you never want to talk about it again. Yeah, Britt Elders and I. Yeah, Britt Elders and I were talking about that in the last podcast, and I hope it doesn't make people mad. I'm not saying every situation fits into this, but there seems to be, and here's another example of people seeing the same event and coming out of it feeling completely different. Some terrified, some okay, it was shocking, but I'm better now, and I kind of got a grasp. But so that's just another example in your case that not everybody thought of it the same way, especially the ones that didn't want to talk about it. But then again, maybe part of that reason is you're already open to it, right?
Well, that's what I think. I think because, like I said, I was very spiritual from a very young age. So therefore, I was already open to whatever may come, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas the others weren't.
Mm-hmm.
There's also
they were more. To them, it was a rumor, and it was like I actually think they were going to think that they were trying to pull a prank on me, but it ended up going the wrong way.
Yeah.
Ended up scaring them, and therefore they never spoke about it.
Ontological shock.
Right place at the wrong time, or wrong place at the right time.
Yeah.
It happens.
Exactly.
A lot of times it seems like different people can be standing side by side. Some can see, they will have different perceptions. Some may see something differently, or they may not see it at all. And it's subjected to each person.
Well, that's
like it's according to their worldview.
Yeah, Rendlesham. Those two guys, something happened completely different for each of them.
I was curious. Rob's question.
Rob's question. Fatima, in 1917, I think, there were thousands of people there. Many saw an apparition of what they perceived to be Virgin Mary. Others saw a huge craft. Some saw nothing, and it was subjective, objective, subjective reality that was true to each person, but it wasn't manifestly across the board true empirically, because our whole environment or reality is perception of how our mind hallucinates what we see to make sense of it. So how we interface from outside of our mind with our five senses comports to what we intake, and it can be completely different.
Do you think, though, Rob, that some of that is because not that the object itself is necessarily different to every person, but that's how each person views it. It's not like changing to fit this person's, because I've heard people talk about in the old days with fairies and stuff like that people called, aliens fairies because that was the closest thing to their society that they could understand it.
I wouldn't rule out that it goes both ways, that the phenomena does push what it wants individual people to see, and individual people will perceive it how they understand it. And also, like Gary Nolan touched on, the density in the Putnam kind of dictates how their perception wiring literally is able to comport it into their understanding and see it. So there's several factors, and I don't think there's any one explanation to it.
Well, I think that's an important thing that Rob just said, is when you try to put everything in one box, you're going to be in trouble because it's going to be different things. But I think, the thing you were just talking about, Gary Nolan, is kind of in a sense what I was trying to say, is that it's, we understand in symbols and stuff like that. And so we try to find the closest symbol when we see something. When you got something that is so different, like send a computer back to the 1800s. And it's like they have no reference to what a computer would look like. I mean, what would they call it? They'd find the next closest thing to be able to understand it. But like you said, Rob, you can't put everything in one box and say everything is this.
Quickly,
I think that's important.
There was that one that Gary Nolan talked about incident where the three people were in the car and were looking up at a craft through their sunroof, and they took pictures of it. It was like 30, 40 feet across. When they got home and looked at the pictures, it was a star shaped that was like maybe 10, 12 feet across. So it projected the image of a giant craft in their minds, all of them, subjectively. But when they empirically looked at it on the film or the camera, digital, it was a little star shape, infinitely smaller.
Maybe it was just trying to show its dominance over them.
Well,
and therefore give it
it's conveying
the feeling
a message. And that seems to be a common theme, that it manifested to you guys to tell your story, and it's like an interactive fairy tale, or not a fairy tale because it's real. They are portraying a narrative that they're advancing, and they're firing for effect. They wanted to have an impact, and hopefully, to work out in a way that they had intended to try and impress, to affect something upon humanity.
I'm guessing,
Yeah.
Anna, in your case, so you probably don't know what the other people saw if they really didn't want to talk about it. Is that true?
Well, they seen what I'd seen that we all saw, because it was like, did you see that? That was huge, sort of thing. But then the conversation just stopped. Everyone
Okay.
else was frightened. I wanted to talk about it, but no one else wanted to talk about it.
That is that's a common thread though. And I'll attest to that because 1961, I was 6 years old. Really, it's probably 1960, but you know, first grade school year in Port Arthur, Texas, D. Queen Elementary, a one building school where, you know, it went from kindergarten, first grade to 12th grade. And the street directly in front of it, it was blocked off. And then the next block across from it was a playground. So every morning, everybody was there in that whole school. You know, I mean, it was really nice times back then. People didn't hurt each other or nothing like that. It was a playground. It was great. So we're about fifth in the line of cars for my mother to drop us off. She carried us to school. It's my sister, Sissy Woods, and my mom and myself. And my mother just turned to her left, and we were about fifth back in the line of cars. And she said, "Anthony," my middle name, "look at those flying saucers." And I said, "Where?" And Sissy was already looking at them to her left, looking straight up. They were directly over a church steeple. There were three of them, probably 30 foot in diameter, the most beautiful silver rotating discs I've ever seen in my life. Diamonds in the atmosphere. Yes, they were beautiful. And in a slow motion pan across that area, at 6 years old, turning my head from those, looking at, I don't know why I wanted to see what other people were thinking, because I knew what I was thinking. People were hanging out windows. There was no air conditioning at that time in this school. And every hand was pointing out windows, and every head that could get out was looking at them. And every kid on that playground, you know, was looking up, and everything got quiet. And they sat there for about a minute and 15 seconds. I'm pretty sure of that. And they just burst straight up and out of sight in less than a second. All at the same time. There was no, this one go, that one. It was just all as one unit. Boom, straight in the air, gone. And everybody just went back to what they were doing, and nobody talked about it.
Did the
It's
weather
amazing,
change
isn't
all
it?
after that happened immediately?
Excuse me? What?
Was there any weather change immediately after that? I mean, did it like a thunderstorm develop? Or
No, nothing. It's bright, beautiful, clear morning, 7:50 in the morning. And in the city of Port Arthur, Texas, a little port city. My father used to ship in and out of there.
Yeah. I feel sad for Anna in a sense, because it must have felt awful lonely that the other witnesses didn't want to talk about it. You must have felt so isolated, and you talked to somebody who didn't see it. It must have been awkward there too. So tell us a little bit about that.
It's probably hard to tell him.
Okay. So we obviously they didn't want to talk about it. So what ended up happening, I went home and I spoke to my grandmother, and I said, "Oh my God," because she was always an open source. You could speak to her about anything, even though she was religious. You could talk to her. So I said to her, "Oh my God, I've just seen a huge craft, a UFO." I said, "No one's believing me. No one wants to talk about it." And then she said to me, she looked a bit worried, and she said to me, she goes, "But don't you remember?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean by don't you remember?" And she said, "When you were 2. I'm like, "Well, I can't remember when I was 2 years old." And she said, "This reminds me of a time when you were 2 years old. You were sitting on your bed, like in a sort of a yoga pose, a normal yoga pose. And she said, you had your arms out. And she said, your eyes were closed, but for 2 hours you sat there talking in a language I've never heard."
Wow.
And I said, "Really?" And she's like, "Yes." She said it was 2 hours. She sat there. She was petrified because she didn't know what was going on. But she said it did not sound like English. It did not sound like any language, but something, how can you say, almost, if you're going to make up a language, let's put it that way. And then after the 2 hours, I must have snapped out of it. And I said, "Oh, I'm finished. I'm back home now." And Yeah, so that was the only person that I told, but while telling that, I actually learned that.
I was going to say that's the unique thing about it, but as Mario mentioned, we'll get to his other encounter in a little bit here, but it seems to be common that it starts as children and then it goes into adulthood and stuff. And
Yes,
so,
that's what I'm learning currently. So yes.
yeah. So, but if you hadn't seen the flying saucer with the other three witnesses, you'd have never brought it up with your grandmother. And the big question
That's
is, would
correct.
she have ever brought that up to you? Without
Probably
that,
not.
yeah, and stuff.
I think we're
Probably not.
allowed. I think we're allowed to remember, because I do think that they have the capability to wipe you clean. I don't know from
Oh
how
yeah,
far,
definitely. I
but
believe that. Yeah,
I really
definitely.
do think they have that capability. So you were supposed to get that message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What
And
the
in other
message?
cases,
Well, that message, but what I was speaking and to whom I was speaking, that I have no idea to this day.
That's wow.
okay. So really, the 1995 was kind of the beginning of something. Started opening more doors, or open your eyes about more things, more events. So after 95, what was the next thing that you experienced?
It was the actual abductions
Okay.
because there was two of them.
Okay. Let's start with the first one.
Okay. Yeah. So the first one was in 2019. It would have been probably February, late February, early March. And it was about, I've got to think back. It's actually on this phone, but I can't. I've got it all written out. So I'm just trying to think back. It was probably about 2:00 in the morning. When, I don't know if any of one of you have ever experienced it, but you get this feeling that you need to, or someone's standing there in the room.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And you just know.
Yeah.
So I was awoken from that, and I thought, for some strange reason, was to look at the time, and I did. So I looked at the time, and I saw it was about 2 a.m. Then I looked over at my husband, and he was asleep. And then I had this gut-wrenching fear to look at the bedroom door. But I thought, well, I'm going to do it. And as I did that, there stood 3 4-foot greys. So one in the center, 2 behind, massive white light behind them, almost blinding. They were wearing blue skin-tight suits. These ones had a red triangle on their actual suit. At this point, I didn't know what to say. I think I was frozen. They're staring at me. I'm staring at them. I'm trying to sort of also shove my husband to wake up. And I get this thought in my head, which was projected from them, saying basically, do not worry. He won't wake up until 9 a.m.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm still staring at them. And I hear, don't be afraid. And I'm still staring. I can't speak. It's almost like I couldn't think.
Yeah.
Then that's when I heard the words "do not fear" straight after that.
Wow.
So I heard "do not fear," and they said, "You need to come with us." And at this point, we were talking through our minds because their mouths. These ones had mouths. They didn't have noses. They had mouths, but they didn't open their mouths. He said, "We will bring you back, but we need you." And I said, "Well, are you sure you're going to bring me back?" And they said yes. And then it must have taken place, because the next thing I know, that white light just got brighter. I'm in their craft. I'm walking around. Everything was white, stark white inside the craft. There was lots of curves that I remember. I remember seeing other people on board. I also remember seeing other greys with other people on board. Yes.
Were there any other alien species, or was it just greys in this case?
Just greys. They were all dressed the same. Just greys. Then I sort of looked down at myself, and it was almost like I had a hospital gown on.
Yeah.
It was some sort of gown.
Yeah.
And the main grey that was in charge of this, I'll say, experiment, he told me to lie down on the bed. And of course I did, because, I mean, at that point you're going to do anything they say.
You're in control.
Yes, that's correct. So I lay down, and I remember him putting his hand or arm on my shoulder. And I remember looking in his eyes. Now, we all know that, they have the black eyes. I haven't seen any with pupils. There were no pupils. But it's almost like a light. I don't know. A light sort of bounced off the pupils, and I could see compassion in its eyes.
Looks like they have a lens over their real eyes, but you can see the
Yes.
reflection through it, a ghost image of his actual eyes.
Yes. And I said, I started getting very, very scared, because I knew something was about to happen. And it was saying to me, it's okay, it'll be very quick. And I asked, is this going to hurt? And he said, yes, it will hurt, but you won't remember it.
Wow.
But yet there was so much compassion radiating, even though they don't seem like they have compassion, it was just radiating from them. And that glimpse that I caught of the eye will always stay with me. So, I'm a bit nervous about this, but I remember
Hard to
looking
talk
up.
about.
Yeah.
Hard to talk about that. No, get down. Get down.
Yeah.
Get down.
I remember looking up, and I saw this robotic arm. And it's funny because someone had surgery. I think it was my husband, actually, who had also shoulder surgery. And he was talking about a robotic arm. It was exactly like one of them. And it came over, and I was told to look up, and I looked up, and then I saw this needle just going straight for the eye. Straight for the eye. And as soon as it entered, I remember it entering, and that was it. I was back at home.
Wow.
I looked at the time. It was 6 a.m. I tried to wake up my husband numerous amounts of times.
So it was still 2 a.m.? Did you say it was still 2 a.m.?
No, 6 a.m.
Oh, 6 a.m. Okay, and then an hour later, he's supposed to wake up. So 4 hours had
9
passed.
a.m. he was supposed to wake up.
Oh, 9
a.m. Yeah, 9 a.m. Wow.
Real quick, how many other humans do you estimate you saw in the craft?
Two.
Okay.
Two.
It was the three of you.
It was large, so who knows how many there were in there.
Maybe in areas that you couldn't see, but the ones in areas that you were. Yeah. I've got a friend of mine who went through an abduction experience, and he actually talked about different layers and like almost being on scaffolding and being able to look down. I'll get him on one of these days to tell his story. It's pretty remarkable. And so you get back home, and it's in your home anyway. It's 6 a.m. And so what happens after that?
So I tried to wake up my husband, shook him a few times. He's dead asleep. And anyone who knows my husband, he actually doesn't sleep. He needs like 3 hours sleep time. He's just one of these people that are hardwired and can't sleep. But he was out cold. And at this point, I'm all soaking drenched. I'm scared. I don't know what to do, who to turn to. So I'm just waiting for him to wake up. And sure enough, at 9 a.m., he wakes up.
So what did he say, and what did you say to him? I mean, if he's a light sleeper, that had to be something that was unusual for him, correct? That he realized that something had happened?
I don't think he realized. I think he was saying, he said to me, well, not think, he said to me, you must have had a really bad nightmare.
No.
I said, it wasn't a nightmare. It was real.
Yeah.
It was, and we just went back and forth. I mean, and I get that, because had I been in his situation, I probably would have said the same thing. So.
But once again, you're in that same place. But once again, you're in that same place. You're all by yourself.
Yes, all by myself. It is hard, and you go and tell friends, and you'll have friends that'll sort of understand you and go, wow, you should look at this. Yeah, this could have, been because of this. Others will go, no, you were dreaming. You're in sleep paralysis. Oh God, I've had all things, thrown at me, but
they weren't there.
What I saw was real.
They weren't there. They can't know.
Yeah.
people can't understand or sometimes comprehend the extraordinary, and so it scares them. It makes them uncomfortable, and so what they want to do is to excuse it away, and that's
Yeah.
maybe that's what you experience, but that's pretty common. I think people have talked about the ontological shock of the idea that we've been told our whole life that we're all there is, that we're basically the center of the universe, and this is it. And what a crazy notion if you think about it.
Oh,
It
absolutely.
is. When you really sit down and think about it, it is.
Yeah, we're not the pinnacle of creation like we think we are.
Yeah.
No.
We're definitely not the only planet with life on it. I mean, if you have, up to 1 trillion planets now, and this is an analogy I always use.
Livable, habitable planet.
Yeah, habitable. Yeah, but yeah.
Well,
but
yeah,
if you
all
have
the exoplanets that they've just discovered in the last year.
120 of them or something like that. That's
Hubble,
what I heard.
Hubble has doubled the size of the known universe.
Yeah, but just think about this.
They don't even think the Big Bang actually happened. I mean, that they are struggling to retain the Big Bang theory because Hubble is just wiping out all these theories because they're not finding a center of the galaxy where everything irradiated from in the microwave background where there's a focal point where it's radiating out from. It's just expansive, and that's what they're finding.
Yeah, but I got a question. Where is it going to, and at what speed?
Is it really going anywhere, or is it just
expanding?
We're expanding. Is it expanding? Is it going somewhere?
I mean, we're moving.
That's growing.
We're moving at 70,000 miles an hour. That's what we're moving at right now. And where are we heading to? And if there's a name for it, I just learned that.
The Great Attractor.
The what?
The Great Attractor.
Absolutely. What is that?
Oh, yes.
Something's attracting it to it. Is that what you guys are saying?
What is that? I've never even heard that term before.
It would be something akin to the opposite of if we have a galactic black hole, we have magnitudes larger, supergalactic black holes that hold together super, close.
I can hear you now.
You would have the quintessential, and there's the great void of nothing that I think is actually some form of a black hole type thing, and the opposite would be the white hole. So I think what we're seeing is instead of one Big Bang, it's actually like a bubble bath where you have multiple contractions of universes that it's like the planet Earth. We have to get hit once in a while to keep our tectonic plates moving and to renew things and hit with comets to restore things and then replenish. There's only so much energy because it has to go from order to chaos unless it's maintained. So there's only a finite amount of energy and things that it can expend before it has to be recycled again. So I think it goes in.
I just cut my grass a little bit ago, so I recycled a little bit of this earth.
Yeah,
that was a good thing. Wow. Well, anyway, the Great Attractor.
If only we could know, yeah. If only.
What's pulling us? Is it from the bang itself, or are all galaxies and everything heading that direction? So the Great Attractor, that's an enigma to me. In my mind.
I'd like to learn more about that one.
It's not only going, growing.
A lot of these scientists say that there can be no life. We can have no visitors here because of the vastness and the distance.
Bobby Loeb wrote a paper 3 years ago.
It's actually funny that you say that.
To be so smart, how can they be so dumb? I mean, I'm just a regular schoolboy, Huh?
It's actually funny that you said that, Mario, because I think I told you about the Space Force, one of the majors of the Space Force.
Yeah.
That actually came on, did a press conference. I think it was back in 2020 now. I can't remember his name. It is on TikTok because I put it up there. But they had asked him towards the end of his interview, do you believe in life on other planets? And he said, well, considering how vast the universe actually is out there, sure, there should, he basically said there is. And he said it on national television. And I sit there and I think, well, this is coming from someone who's basically in charge of Space Force.
Yeah.
Saying he believes that there are other beings out there and no one's listening.
Well, the thing is, I think you ask most scientists, they will agree that there's very possible to have life out there. They don't have a problem with the fact there's life out there. Their argument is it can't get here. And my argument is that's a mute argument because they are here. You can argue all you want about, if they can
Been
get
here.
here and how
Right.
can they get here. But the reality is they are here, and whether they've been here for 1,000 years or 10,000 years or 1,000 years, whatever,
Or
they
millions of
came
years.
from somewhere originally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Avi Loeb came out supporting Kirkpatrick on that, saying, well, they'd have to span millions of light years. Now, the nearest solar system is 4.2 light years away.
Exactly.
That's a fallacy. And the conventional travel would take him X amount of time. Well, 4 years ago, Avi Loeb wrote a paper arguing that it is entirely possible for other life to get here from other solar systems and galaxies using, Cuvier warp drives, things like that, wormholes. So he's not being sincere. He's preaching to the narrative that he's been asked to help portray, but his own papers and history betray that he's not being sincere.
Well, I think he's greatly influenced by the scientific community around him, and he's afraid to say certain things. The one thing that I was very, very disappointed in Avi Loeb for, I still respect him. I respect the Galileo Project, but he didn't believe David Grush, and that really disappointed me.
Yeah, really.
Wow.
It really did. Yeah, I just was like shocked that he didn't believe him. But I think it's because he's got a bunch of scientific buddies he's trying to influence and bring into the Galileo Project. And if he goes out talking about, biological remains and crash retrieval and reverse engineering, he's going to push those people away. And so maybe that was a defensive thing to do.
I actually agree with that. I agree with that, Dale. Yeah. He's being influenced by those around him.
Right. And stuff. But I'm glad we have the Saul Foundation, because I really think that those guys are much more open to talking about the things that nobody wants to talk about, things I just mentioned. And so I'm really, so grateful for Gary Nolan and Chris Mellon and all the others. I think, was it Nolan, Grush, and who was the other person that set up Saul? There was three main people. I can't remember the third one right now, but
is that Ryan Graves or somebody?
Scofish, whatever. I can't remember his name exactly.
There was three of them. The two I really remembered for whatever reason. I'm getting older and can't remember the third one. So
join the club.
We're going to 2019. We're going to the fact that you woke up in your bed at 6 a.m. You could not get your husband awake. And so you're awake from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. And you try to wake him up, but you can't wake him up. And then at 9 o'clock exactly,
he wakes up.
He wakes up. Now, how can he explain that in a dream?
Well, you can't explain it.
That's what I'm saying. That's pretty solid evidence. Hey, I've been awake for 3 hours. It isn't like I dreamed until 8:59, and then I woke you up and told you all this stuff.
Well, exactly. Yeah, because I mean, if you know yourself, like if you have a dream and you wake up during the night and then you go back,
right,
you'll start to dream something else.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not the same dream. It's very rare. Maybe somebody
I know the difference.
But the thing was, to me, the most telling thing is you were told that he won't wake up until 9 a.m.
Yeah.
And so whether that was, which it wasn't a dream, but if you went, play devil's advocate, even if that was a dream, then how come you woke up at 9 o'clock? You know what I'm saying?
That's correct.
It makes no sense. It was a dream.
Okay, move. No,
that's exactly right.
Yeah. So to me, that's evidence that it wasn't a dream, because there was physical evidence, in the sense that your husband woke up exactly when they said. So what happened after that? I'm guessing there was at least one other. You said there were two abduction experiences.
There was another incident.
Anything in between? I don't want to miss anything here. Was there anything in between?
Nothing in between. No. So nothing in between. It was 2019 was, I'm going to cry, a hard year because my father was dying.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So after that, I was too occupied with looking after him, so that didn't cross, my mind too much. Now and then it would when I had my own time to myself, but I just pushed it aside. Yep. Then comes October 2019.
Okay.
God. Once again, same thing. I think it was 2:40 a.m. because the same thing happened. I awoke, I instantly looked at the clock again because I had that same sort of feeling, but this time I didn't have that fear.
Yeah. Same feeling. You sensed it before it ever happened.
Yes, that's right.
That's what they leave you with.
Yeah. It always stays with you. It never leaves.
Yep.
And so I looked at the time. It was 2:40. I went to look at the door. Once again, there was that white light. It's hard to describe. It's just like you can't even see the door frame because it's just illuminating so bright. There stood 3, now that I know, Nordics. So a male who identified himself as Answa and 2 females behind him.
Tall?
The most beautiful, humanoid, I guess, humanoid beings ever. Or if you want to say humans, because they looked very much like us.
So these were not Grace.
Extremely beautiful.
So everybody knows these.
Pardon?
The second abduction was not Grace, correct? Yeah, he's more like, I guess, where your name comes from, Nordic Queen.
Yes.
So that's probably the closest thing. So go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just want to make sure that everybody understood. You experienced 2 abductions within the same year by 2 different species.
Yes.
Okay.
But they could have been working together, and it sounds like
I mean, it could be a correlation there as well. But I'm just saying it's clearly not.
There certainly is a correlation. Certainly is. So I look and this was mesmerizing because of their beauty and their light. And it was almost that emanate love. So there was no fear here. And they said, "Oh, we would like you to come with us. Would you like us to show you where we're from?" There was no hesitation at this point. I was like, "Okay." And they said, "We'll bring you back. You'll be back quickly." So once again, next thing I know, I'm in a craft, but this is a craft that's see-through. This is not anything metallic. It's almost like an egg-shaped sphere is probably the best way that I could describe it. Inside, it was all computerized. There was no, steering wheel or whatever. It was all computerized. There was binary writing on the walls on either side. I saw now that I know Nordics, whatever they're doing, I don't know. They're reading it, I suppose. The man gestures for me to come forward right up at the front of the craft, which I did. I remember asking, "Where are you from?" And they said, "Well, we used to live behind Venus." And I said, "Behind Venus?" And he said, "Yes." He goes, "But we lost our moon to Earth. So we had to leave."
That actually fits why Venus would be so jacked up right now.
I don't know.
The
Yeah.
moon gives our planet stability for our seasons, our atmosphere, and to keep it from, life wouldn't exist as it is if we didn't have the moon.
Yeah, we did.
Wow.
Thea's collision was another theory that went with it. This sounds something different, but the same principle. If we weren't the moon wasn't exactly at the angle it's at, the distance from the Earth, which I had a podcast with Sofa Joba Clark, and we talked about the very same thing that Rob and Mario are mentioning, and the fact that without the moon we wouldn't have 4 seasons, and if the moon wasn't exactly where it is at the angle it's in right now, we wouldn't have 4 seasons. We wouldn't have life as we know it.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So their story was basically showing what happened to them. So they had to migrate and live elsewhere, which, as I know it, is Procyon. They were migrated to there in conjunction with the Greys. So that was all being told to me. So the Greys had actually helped them. So
Wow, cool.
as we're flying, They told me to look down, and I looked down. And the best way I can describe it for everyone else to understand is if you can imagine the Grand Canyon, but ice, snow and ice, and all the water is frozen like blue, but a very vivid blue. And we're just flying around there, and I'm like, this is beautiful. This is absolutely beautiful. And he's saying, well, this is home. And I said, this is home? I'm like, I want to stay, you know. And then and he was, so Answer, the male, he said, you can't stay, but you will be back one day.
I want to go. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, it was breathtaking. There's no word. There is no word on how breathtaking it was actually to see.
So how many races are there? How many? That's always perplexed me. You hear that there's so many different races, and you see these pics of reptilians and Nordics, and Greys, insectoids. What am I missing here?
Star Wars is true.
Star Wars is true. And I think the latest one I saw was of a spider or something like that. Was I don't know, something with 8 legs or something, you know?
Oh, you talking that movie that came out?
There's a lot from what I've been reading, but I try not to read too much because I don't like to. And that's like when a lot of people mention names or what's going on in that community. I don't like to read too much because I think that then
influence.
you can get sidetracked, or you can
generate false memories.
Yeah. I did ask. I remember asking the Nordic about the Greys and my experience with them, and they said that's okay. They go, they needed to do that in order for you to be able to see.
Yeah.
So I put that as that needle coming down into my eye, maybe gave me the ability to be able to see more.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I try to reason with myself with those two incidences.
Or a really advanced microchip of some kind. You just don't know. I mean, what they can communicate with and how, you don't know. And what a brilliant place to be able to hide something, you know. I just think there's such a vast amount of space in technology between what we even think about, we know and have learned compared to where they are, that we can't overcome that caveat, you know. It's very hard. We're not within 100 years, you know, that they have capabilities like that. What was someone was talking about last week about quantum expansion and concerning one of the recovered craft that certain people are working with. It's all rumor, nothing substantiated, but someone gets into this thing, you know, car-sized, a recovered craft, gets in it, turns and looks forward, and it's like 6 football fields inside of it. Quantum expansion. And of course, so visually overwhelming, they get immediately sick and get out of it. So that's something that you got to overcome. But yeah, that's amazing.
Mario, I want to ask you a question on that because I wrote this question probably 3 years ago, and what you just described looks smaller from the outside, but when you go in, it's much bigger.
Quantum expansion. Yeah,
I asked that question ironically, like about 3 years ago, because I'm just going, some of these crafts seem so small, but yet when the people get inside of them, what they describe, either they've been taken to another craft or, you know, it's the very thing you're describing. The craft from the outside looks small, but when they get inside, it's so much bigger.
Yeah.
Their own local, essentially their own galaxy. They're in their own local environment that is not ours. It's a gateway, like a portal where you're in the door with the threshold. Because, you know, our atomic structure is mostly empty space. It's perfectly, physics are there to where it can, we can be compressed. You know, it's either shrinking the body or comporting it into another galaxy, so to speak.
Well, no, this is an actual recovered craft. It's only
that's what I'm saying.
the size of a Volkswagen.
Inside of it,
And it's stationary somewhere, and they open a door to get in it. And as soon as they get in it and look forward, this thing is just a whole another ship inside of itself.
yeah.
Trying to step out of it. So does it travel as that small little Volkswagen, or how does it travel? How can something so large, so small, all at the same time? That's the technology difference, you know.
Factor them down to the
Well, they
scale.
are. They're a lot more advanced than we all are. So
Oh my God, yeah,
anything's possible.
yeah. So it blows my mind just to discuss some of this stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
There's no reason why we couldn't be with all that empty space in our atomic structure to be compressed down to that size. You know, it's just we're mostly nothing in energy field. So, you know, we could be reduced down to Planck scale and still be just as intact as we are now. It's relative.
Well, in the vast scheme of things, have you ever seen that picture that the Voyager took back in, I don't know when Carl Sagan instructed the Voyager to turn around and take a picture of Earth at its furthest most picture ever taken. I don't know how many, millions of miles it is. Anyway, you see a small little line, and that's the rays of the sun. And then in the middle of that, you see a blue dot, and it is absolutely the size of this pinhead right there.
Yeah.
And it's blue from that distance. And
Wow.
it's in that little stream of light, a ray of the sun. And there we all are with all of our problems, our sizes, our indifferences. There we all are. It's all contained right there,
It's like a dust particle drifting through the ray coming through the window.
I ordered the poster. I got to have it.
Yeah, I'd like to see that too.
I'm going to look it up.
Things of the stars. If you just go to that website, it's a NASA site, JPL and all. It's just things of the stars. It's really cool. I've got 5 or 6 I want to hang, but I haven't even put them up. This is just a makeshift in here, my RC room.
And so, Anna, let me ask the question. We ask about the Greys. When you met with the Nordics, did they have a message for you, for humanity, or for you as a person?
The main message that I was given, and this is for humanity, I think for the entire world, was we appear to people before a great disaster happens on your planet.
So,
and that was the message that I was given.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when I talked to Brett, she mentioned that the Pleiadians are not going to intervene. And then I asked her about that, and she said, yet. And I don't know if I want to bank our history on this or not, but supposedly, and it would make sense even if there were beings living on the planet, that they're going to, if it became nuclear war, and I think the way she described it was one bomb, maybe not so much, but if it's all out warfare, they would intervene. I have my own questions about, there's a story out of Russia. I think George Knapp was the one who brought it up, where they actually showed up over one of their missile bases and turned them on. And they were just freaking out, and they couldn't stop it. And when the UFO left, the countdown stopped before they actually went off.
Yeah, I think I saw that the other day, actually.
Yeah, and then we have
how many seconds
amazing.
left? 10 seconds left.
Yeah, then we have the one here in the U.S. Where they shut them all. Was it 10? I believe they shut them all 10 down. They tested all of the equipment and could find nothing wrong with it. And I just go, what's the message? Is the message we can turn them on and we can turn them off? We have total control over it. What is the message?
The message, don't play with fire or you'll get burnt. That's, I think, that in our terms, that would be the message.
And maybe
I don't know. I just
do it to themselves.
I do believe it's probably a war that they are talking about, and like a world war that's coming.
Yeah,
that's the feeling that I got.
If it's nuclear, everybody knows nobody survives. We have so many thousands of nuclear warheads and weapons, that there's nobody survives. And I really hope that our leaders know that. I hope that Putin knows that, Xi knows that, Biden knows that, because you can't win a nuclear war. Everybody
No.
loses. And so I kind of hope that, as much as I don't know for sure on any of this because I didn't experience it, but I really hope that what the Palladians, said to Billy, I hope it's true. I hope that if we do get that stupid, that there's somebody to stop it, and my
Yeah.
question is, you look at them shutting him down and starting him up. My question is, can they do all of them? Can they stop all of them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I believe so. Without a doubt, I believe that they could.
In whatever condition that they're in, too, they could probably stop them in flight as well.
I
Yeah.
suspect we have some technology already, these satellites that will shoot them down, but can we get them all? I don't think we can. So
No, I
I
don't
don't,
think so either.
I don't even like thinking about it. I don't know about you guys, but I don't even like thinking about it. We've seen the movies of what it might look like, but I suspect, if there's any survivors, it's back to the Stone Ages, and it's not going to be pretty for anybody living through that at all. So I really
Yes, of
hope,
course.
on a positive note, I don't want to go to the negative. On a positive note, I really hope that there is somebody there to stop us if that happens. Because, as I talked to Steve Bassett about, when they talk about getting into a world after disclosure and how we're all going to unite, and that's what I want. That's what I really hope for.
I think that's what
what
we
do we
all
do with
want.
people like Putin? What do we do with the Hitlers of the world, the dictators that want control and powers? How do we get them out of the loop?
China wants
And
By
everything in
talking, I think just by educating ourselves, and I think the Nordics' main message is first love, learn, and listen.
Right.
So
I think
listen,
the argument of
get a
education.
lot more people talking.
Yeah. They
Yes.
say Germany was one of the most educated countries in the world at the time. And so it has to be the right kind of education, not just intelligence.
Well,
but
obviously.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I think what you're saying is like with Brit, you know, it's love. We got to learn how to be, the kind of humans that we're supposed to be. And that begins with loving each other,
Yeah.
and getting
That actually, that interview moved me so much. I think you remember I sent you a voice thing. I was in tears. I was just like, she knows me. She knows what I've seen.
okay.
And that connection was just really, really beautiful.
Yeah. So my question, because there are all kinds of different viewpoints. I've heard statistics. I don't know if they're correct or not, and I'm not going to give it to you until I ask the question because I don't want to lead you on that. And I'll ask Mauro this question later on when
Wait a second.
he's done with his testimony. But
Mhm.
if you had it to happen all over again, would you have chosen for it to happen or not to happen? Would you want it to happen or
Yes.
not to happen?
Yes.
You would.
Yes.
Okay. So
Mhm.
you feel like even
100%.
though, so even though there was parts of it that were scary for you, because I know that, and we have to be fair here, not everybody's experience is yours.
That's
I mean,
correct.
I've talked to some people that, and I've got my own theories on some of that. It doesn't mean I'm right, but being a pastor, I know and understand what evil is, and I understand that there is a spiritual realm, and what a lot of these people describe, whether it actually is or not, really
Mhm.
feels like demonic. You can, if you don't want to go off the word demonic, you can talk. I mean, all kinds of cultures have their ideas of evil spirits, and
Of course they do. Yeah.
and so to me, some of it anyway, and I'm not saying it is, I'm saying as I analyze it, as I look at it from where I'm coming from, the stuff that they describe is just exactly what demons would want to plant in your mind. The horror and the terror and the, if you, I'm not telling people to have to read the Bible, but if you read the Bible and you see what demons actually do to people, they tried to drown the kid. Jesus had to come down from the Mount of Transfiguration, at least when he got down. I mean, this thing was trying to throw him in the fire. It was trying to drown him. I mean, just flat evil. And so
Yeah,
that's what the dreams remind me of, or not the
yeah,
dreams, but the abduction account remind
incidents.
me of. It doesn't mean I'm right,
Yeah,
but it makes me wonder and stuff.
to be honest, I see them as separate, completely separate. You know,
There could be other species too.
this oh God, Mario just read off that list earlier on
Yeah.
of different species.
Yeah.
But when it comes to demons, I think that they're their own entity. If that makes sense. I don't. They, to me, aren't. They're separate from
Yeah.
our cosmic
Yeah.
cousins. That's the way I'd like to say it. Yeah.
The hard part is that, because I agree with you, there's a physical realm and then there's a spiritual realm, and the reality is the two do collide, and the two can go together. We see that, but that's where I've argued in the past. Yeah, I've argued in the past that I think maybe we're conflating the two and making them one when, as you say, maybe they're not one, maybe they're two separate things. Now, I'm open enough to say that I don't know everything. I could be 100% wrong on this, but this is just my analysis, my way of looking at it, trying to understand it as well. Yeah. So.
Yeah, of course, of course.
The one thing you mentioned something about, so you could see, and then we'll let you, if there's any more, we'll let you go. But I'm just help everybody understand, because you weren't blind. So what does, when you say to help you see, what does that mean?
So to me, that meant to be able to see them. I suppose that's the only thing that I could understand. Or maybe for the possibility to see more in the future. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that was what the Greys did. So the Nordics advised the Greys to do. So the best way I can describe it is the Greys are the medical. If we're going to put them up on a step ladder. So they do all the experiments, gather whatever they need to do. The Nordics oversee all of that. But they generally don't mean harm to anyone. And whether from where it goes from there, I don't know.
Okay, you said they used to be a planet on the other side of Venus. Where are they now? Are they in the Pleiades, or are they somewhere else? Pleiades.
They're in Procyon, which is in the Canis Minor. In the Canis Minor.
Okay.
Constellation.
So you had the second. Go ahead, Rob.
Did she say what I think she mentioned the planet or sun a while ago when she was talking about
Procyon.
Is that the sun's name?
No. That's where they are. So Procyon is known as a star, but in fact it's actually a planet.
Okay.
So let's continue. Is that the last event, or is there other things that continue to today?
That was the last event for a while. Mm-hmm. And same thing happened. I was brought home, but this time I was only gone for 40 minutes. I wasn't gone as long as I was with the Greys.
Okay.
Which was reassuring. And that's when it all started. That's when I started saying, oh, hang on a minute, what's happening here? These aren't, I'm trying to convince myself as well as time goes, these are actual abductions. And that's when I start watching documentaries, trying to figure out what's the Greys, what's the Nordics, who's this what? And I remember it very, very, very vividly. I was watching one documentary, and it was in reference to President Eisenhower that encountered the Nordics. And when they said Nordics, the hairs on my arms stood up. And I knew then and then this was real. Without a shadow of a doubt, Right. So, and as I'm watching things on YouTube, so forth, I came across Mario's incident. And as I'm watching that, I hear him say, do not fear. And I was like, whoa, hang on a second.
That clicked.
I need to speak to this man. But then I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to find this person? It's not like you can type in Mario Woods and you don't even know where he lives and be automatically connected. I was just so thankful that he had set his email so that I could actually contact him, because those words, do not fear, that packs a punch.
Those are common.
Quite cool.
That's how we started communicating.
Yeah.
That's one of the common things I hear all the time from people who've been abducted. Not that every experience is this way, but there's a lot of them where, you know, Betty and Barney Hill, where you're going to be okay. They're being reassured over and over again, you're going to be okay. And, you know, I hear the same thing from your experience. I know it's the same thing as Mario's. Did the second time, did your husband get paralyzed, or was it because it was so short? And I have to say this, I bet that was probably the best 40 minutes of your life, you know.
Definitely was. If I could go back up there, I'd be up there. I'd be like, hey, hitch a ride now. Yeah, no, he woke up. All
right. Okay. It's like a real bummer when you get back. It's like, wow, you know.
It's like, yeah, I want to go back.
Yeah. Any
I wish I could.
paranormal events happen, hitchhiker effect, anything like that happen to you?
No, paranormal, yes. When I was paranormal quite a bit, actually, through my younger years, from probably about the age of 5 to the age of 12. My mother, I used to sleepwalk, you know, around the house when I was about 7.
Wow.
But what I would actually do is I would go around turning on all the lights in the house, you know, and my mother would later say to me,
and asleep doing that. Really?
Yes, turning on all the lights. And so my mother and I, obviously, when I was a bit older, we started talking about it, and she'd say, well, you'd say the strangest things. You would actually say, well, I'm just turning on the light for those who can't see so that they can transition over. Well, I didn't say in those words, but so that people can find the light, and so that my staff family can see me.
Even at a young age, huh? One of the things that I have a small sample size, but I do want to mention it because when we talk about possible signs of abduction, I've talked to, I think, 5 or 6 abductees now, and when I go and look, I think I found one place, and that was with like AI, and I had to word it exactly right to get them to not give me the long list of psychiatrists and stuff in Harvard and all that kind of stuff. But that was the only one that mentioned as a possible sign vibrations in the body. Like, and Mario nailed it when he said it. It's like you've got a cell phone ringing in, like, inside your leg or inside your body, but there's no cell phone, but it's that exact same feeling. And I'm
like an old pager. It's like an old pager, man.
Right.
I don't know if you remember those, but it is on vibrate.
I want credit with being the first one to discover this new sign of alien abduction, but I'm just kidding on that, of course. But anyway, I just want to bring that up because it's like it's a small sample size. I get it, but every one of the people I've talked to have said the same thing, that they've experienced a vibration, like a cell phone or a pager or something like that going off,
like in your body.
Yeah.
You know, like mine happens in my. Where does yours happen?
Mine?
Where
in
does
my
yours
hands.
In your hand? And mine happens in my hips. I feel it on one side sometimes, and others the other day. You know, I don't know. It's strange.
Yeah.
Well, there's my phone. I have nothing. So we've been talking about this. It's pretty wild, really.
Yeah, it is wild. I did want to thank you, and I want everybody to know the only reason I've got to know Mario Woods is because Anna was the one who introduced us. And you remember, Anna, I was kind of skeptical to begin with. I tend to be that way as a person, but it's like, is that really Mario Woods? And she said, yeah, I've seen his face. And I go, okay. And then I met him. But anyway, I wouldn't know Mario if it wasn't for you. And I want to tell you that you did a fantastic job with your testimony. I mean, I just...
thank you. I was a bit nervous in the beginning, but I was sort of okay now.
Well, that's why Mario, when I first started doing this, I think he was my first or second podcast. You know, it's hard to believe it's been 4 or 5 months already, and how many podcasts I've done since then. But I just told him, you know, he's like, well, are you nervous? And I was like, no, I get up every Sunday and stand in front of people, and I have people's eyes staring back at me. I have a camera and a screen. This isn't near as intimidating as that is. but I want to thank you because I really, like with Rob and yourself, I really value the friendships that I've made through this community, and I value each and every one of you. And like I said,
I wholly do as well, because without this community, you feel absolutely lost.
Yeah, you do.
You feel
Alone.
isolated, and it's not a good thing. And I wish, and there's one thing that does irk me about the community actually is, and I know it's because of the way people influence other people, but listen to the experiences as well. It's almost like gone experience tech. And it's as soon as they've introduced the name UAP instead of UFO, and that really irks me.
It does me too.
And yeah, it's I don't know, it's something in my gut that just I don't like. It's thrown in there just to confuse,
to distract you from the subject matter.
UFO's coming back, though. I want you to know that. I was talking to Bassett about it, and it's coming back. The reason at least one of the reasons that was told to me why they did that is because they don't know if these objects are actually flying, that they're anomalous, and it was aerial at first, but then they moved it to anomalous. But you can also look at it.
I saw was definitely flying.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Was being pulled by a string.
UFOs is making a comeback. Now the new one that nobody wants you to say anymore is extraterrestrial. For some reason that's in the out, but I think everything old will be new again. So we'll eventually make our way back to that. All right, Mario, it's your turn, buddy. Appreciate you being on the podcast again. This is the second time, as I mentioned. So why don't you tell us a little bit kind of with your experience and where you were, what was the date? I know you were in South Dakota. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. So what were you doing in South Dakota?
Well, I was in the Air Force, and I was a security policeman in the Air Force at the time, and I spent a total of just about 9 years. Went in 75, got out in 83, and on the delayed enlistment program, and had a really good time. But in 77, I was stationed at Ellsworth Air Force Base, South Dakota, and I was in the Minuteman missile field, and meaning that the main support base of Ellsworth, which populated just about 800 security policemen by themselves, was where our dormitories and so forth were. We also had an aircraft wing of B-52s, uploaded aircraft, and formed part of the NORAD, or Northern Tier nuke bases, which you had Minot, North Dakota, Malmstrom, Montana, F.E. Warren in Wyoming, and we were in South Dakota. Anyway, the missile complexes are spread out and all over, the whole northwestern part of the country. And so at Ellsworth, we were down like from the Badlands all the way over to the border of Wyoming, and in that upper corner facing North Dakota. So anyway, on this particular night, I saw an object. We lived on these launch control facilities for 3 days at a time, and came in the morning of the fourth day. And
why don't we back up for a second, Mario?
Yeah.
So we give people an understanding of exactly what the setup was. Now, I heard you talk about there were 150 silos. Were all of those in South Dakota, or was that the Northern Tier altogether?
No, that was just Ellsworth Air Force Base. That's
Ellsworth by itself.
150. Each base had 150. So
okay, and then
the NORAD missile network, yes.
And there was control centers in each one of them. There were 15 of these control centers, correct?
Yeah, each site's responsible for 10 rockets total, and that would mean there would be 15 launch control facilities where you live, manned by 6 security policemen, facility manager, a site cook, and 4 officers, 2 of which were on duty as a capsule crew at any given time down below ground. And on duty, security policemen responded to any and all given alarms in the field where our missiles were located. And as I said, we were responsible for 10 missiles. And we performed all facility checks, responses due to alarms, that kind of thing, patrol of areas, augmented our sister flights, and that type of thing.
Okay, so we want to make sure that everybody understands that we're talking about Minuteman missiles.
Minuteman twos, yes.
Minuteman twos, okay.
Yeah.
And this was in 1977. People have to understand this is getting towards the end of the Cold War. Because it was in 80 something or another. No, it's been around 81, 82, somewhere in there. I can't remember the exact date. I just remember, Reagan, I was in boot camp, actually apprenticeship training when President Reagan got shot. I'll never forget that. And President Reagan was the one who, got Gorbachev to tear down the wall, the famous saying.
Oh, yeah.
So I want to put this in historical context. This was towards the end of the Cold War. And so these missiles were our defense. If Russia would send nuclear missiles here, this is how we would retaliate. Correct?
Yes. Just under 30 minutes, we changed the face of the planet on both sides forever.
Would have been the end of the world. You were part of the 44th Missile Security
Squadron. Correct.
Squadron. Yeah. And so just amazing. Now, the one thing I wanted to bring up, and I watched a little bit of your interview with Chris Lato, and he, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I do want to bring this up, is that, what was it, in August of 1976, there was a similar event to what you experienced?
There was a craft that was went up and down the runway, which was confirmed by the tower at Ellsworth Air Force Base. There's been many of those, and literally, I think they have a sense of humor anymore. But it went up and down the runway, which is a restricted area. So at that time, Sabre jets were they Sabre jets? I can't remember what we had there. I think they were. I think there were some Sabre jets that we had there, 3 of them, and they were scrambled after the craft. And that's happened more than and prior to 76 with other craft out into the Belle Fourche area, Sturgis area, Badlands area. It's just been going on a long time out there.
The thing that caught me on it, Mario, was the fact that it was a red glowing object.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
And, that's why to me it's like, whoa, this could possibly be, I don't know how big it was or how large it was, but this could have possibly been the same craft that you saw about 15 months later, just because of the description. I don't know how many red, huge balls like that, glowing balls, are portrayed as, or represent UFOs, but we have 2 of them, in the same area, 15 months apart. And I just thought, wow, I hadn't heard that one. I wish I'd had it for our first interview.
About 55 miles. It would have been to the west of the runways when I would see it. If it would have been the same vehicle, I'm not sure. This one, was literally the size of a Walmart building.
I want to
experience. It wasn't really a fire; it was a close burning plasma of some type. I mean, I didn't know what you'd call it then. It wasn't leaping flames. It was just very close proximity, like an electrical charge you see running over a metal surface. That's the way it was. No cockpit, no wings, no leading edges, no doors, just gargantuan and full of the most powerful energy that I could even imagine. I can't even imagine that kind of energy, what it did or what it was capable of.
Well, before we get there, I want to bring one thing up. This was your invitation from AARO. I don't want this to fall through the cracks, so I'm going to bring it up. And
excuse the wrinkles. I didn't know.
The wrinkles make it a little harder to read, but this was it was an email that was sent to you on March 14th, 2023.
That's right.
Like, if I read it right, 5:49 p.m. or 5 p.m. 49 seconds.
That's it.
And stuff. So this was your invitation to AARO, and so.
Great.
Did you go?
Oh, no, I did the interview right here in my home.
Okay, so you didn't actually go in person, but they called you.
You're invited to go, but, that's a trip to Washington, D.C. that I really didn't want to take it.
And they're not going to pay you to get there. No. You have to pay your own dime. No. Okay, but you talked to them. And how long was the conversation?
4 hours and 19 minutes. I think I was about number 5 in the queue.
Okay, so you
of the people that had been spoken to at that particular point, I think I was number 5.
Okay, so this was a situation where you told them what you're going to tell us, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's always the same, however you want me to do it.
Okay. So I really want your response on this. It made me upset. But the AARO report, how did that make you feel?
Well, I'm pretty let down compared to what I'd been doing earlier in that month. We did some filming somewhere, and I'm not at liberty to say where, but it was really, really is going to be a really great documentary. And not because I'm in it, there's so many others in it. I'm just one face in many. But anyway, when I got back from that, it wasn't even a week and a half when I got that first a call and then an email invitation, and it was supposed to be in a rush, as I was told, because he was going to appear before Congress, Sean Kirkpatrick. And so, I transcribed the whole thing, or, told him everything in sequence. And, he thanked me and everything, told me I'd get a copy of it and all this stuff and everything. It wasn't recorded. I said, how can you write that fast? But I did hear other things in the background. There was other people there. Others that have done this say, no, it was just one person, but that's not true. And 2 weeks later, after all of that, he sat in front of Congress and just literally said that there was no connection between, any sighting and nuclear, our nuclear arsenal or anything like that. And it just made me want to stand up and just, say liar,
Yeah.
I was worth a lot of money to the United States government at that time as a protection officer for these Minuteman nuclear weapons, and, training doesn't come cheap, and it's something that, the Air Force takes very seriously. And I know what I experienced, and for that man to sit there and literally slap every security policeman down in the face by saying those things, I wanted to pull that nose ring out of it myself, But I just think that was just completely wrong for him to make such a statement. And this guy he's an astrophysicist, correct? Is he not?
I believe that's Phil. He went to Oak Ridge or something like that. That's where he went
Yeah,
to work.
that's where I came from. I spent 11 years there. I was at Lockheed Martin Marietta first, and then Lockheed came in.
Do you feel betrayed?
I just feel let down. You just have the wrong person, in a job they shouldn't be in.
Well, you
They never
trust.
get the right person in their jobs, man.
Right.
They always get somebody that's going to refute everything. I mean, why not work with people? Why not glean what you can and information from every part of what they're telling you? Because there's truths in all of it.
Right.
They need to use that.
Yeah. I just don't think he was the right man for the job. Steve and I have talked about it. Don't think the office was really set up to bring about transparency. That was never it. It was a PR.
You don't think that the industrial military complex had some enticement into that?
Oh, yeah.
I would think so. I mean, how do you go from what you're doing? It's not easy to get to obtain a Q clearance, go into Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and work for Lockheed Martin, Martin Marietta, EG&G, or whoever's there at this particular time. So I've been out to Los Alamos and Sandia also. General Electric, Neutron Devices. I mean, that was run by General Electric. So, they don't just make refrigerators. But how can he just pull out from what he did and just at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory? That's where he is. He's not at Y-12, which is the machining part of the whole facility of everything, like NASA, everything. They have the most unbelievable machine shops in the world there.
Well, he was caught in several lies.
Huh?
He was caught in several lies, and so
yeah. And how do you obtain a Q clearance and do that? Because listen, if my second grade teacher in one of my investigations on that Q clearance would have said, that child is not to be trusted. That child is this. He did that from second grade. And in the process of your Q clearance, you wouldn't get that clearance. You would.
Rob was telling, was it related to Grush somehow? Didn't he get caught in a lie, Rob?
With
he said he didn't talk to him. He didn't talk to David Grush at one point, and you told me there were emails and all. There would be ways to check it and prove that
and
he had
tried to portray with the FOIA release that Greenwald trotted out and you're so proud of, is that Kirkpatrick kept saying that he had the clearances for David to speak on any UFO UAP program. Well, if you read the context correctly with what Mellon wrote in those replies and such, that shouldn't have been, it was intentional to put the signal messages in there. They were trying to portray a narrative, a false one. Um, Mario could talk to this a lot better than I could, but if you don't know the name of the program, it's classified to even tell them it exists. If you don't have a need to know, you can't say, well, you don't have clearance for this program. You're not read in, so I can't tell you what it consisted of. You can't even tell them it exists. And Kirkpatrick could not tell him he couldn't produce the proper tickets to show that he had knowledge of the programs that had dual purpose use, because that's what it showed in the reply, either by Mellon, somebody in there, one of the two.
They all, honestly, not to say it abruptly, but if they all hide behind who's got what, who said this, who did that, who swings the biggest yardstick, we're never going to find out a damn thing. What they've done is created a political atmosphere within an already atmosphere of what we're trying to get to the truth of.
If they were trying to
wrong person for the damn job,
shut David up and prosecute him, that would have been a way to do it. And he was too smart to be trapped like that. That's why he let them stand in the aisle. And when he went to meet him, they said they had the clearance, but they couldn't produce the tickets. Yeah, sure, they had clearance allegedly for every UAP related program, but as it said in those messages, some of those programs could be dual use, and they weren't cleared for those. So he couldn't speak to those programs if they had dual use. And if Kirkpatrick couldn't tell him what they were or that they existed, he can't claim blanketly that he had clearance to all that, because he couldn't tell him what those were. And
well, one day when our friends just make themselves known, all this will be just a waste of interview. We'll sit here on this to the couch, come home and say, well, why didn't they say this? That's when disclosure is going to happen. Absolutely. Just like the day the earth stood still. They take over every piece of media on this planet all at one time. Times Square, every cell phone, everything. We're here. This is us up here. Or this is us coming up from down here. We've been here all along. Eventually that's going to happen, whether we start to annihilate ourselves or not, or we live and let live and try to straighten something out. I don't know what. They'll expose themselves, because
I wanted Rob.
We live in this circle is too powerful. Is just everybody's got to be powerful. Everybody's got to know more than this person or what have you. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
Something that's going to happen. They're going to expose themselves.
Okay, I got two things. I want to get to Anna in a second, but back to Rob to help people understand dual purpose. Can you explain that, what that means, so that people that maybe aren't in the military and have the understanding you have, how can you explain that they could be cleared for one thing but not the other? Can you clarify what that would look like, Rob?
Well, say for instance, if it was a DOE or any organization, CIA, it doesn't matter. But if they have a dual use to where they accommodate UAP related materials or
information,
services, that they encompass that, but they also encompass another classified program that's the SAP that is highly bigoted, then they don't have access to talk about that program's even existence unless they have the proper clearance and need to know and can produce the authorization to even demonstrate, like the Wilson documents. If they can't show that they even know what the name of the program is or that it exists, then obviously they don't have clearance and need to know to access it. Right. So telling David that, we've got clearance for all UAP programs, but if he couldn't produce the name of a specific program that had dual use that David was aware of and knew the name of, but Kirkpatrick couldn't produce the receipts to show that he knew of that specific program, then he didn't have clearance and need to know on that. And he couldn't tell him by law what those were. David was following the letter of the law. Kirkpatrick was being disingenuous and a weasel, basically.
Okay.
Well, my next seemed like entrapment.
Right. My next question's for Anna, because we only have our little fishbowl here in America to see how things impact us. But did the AARO report, did it have any impact at all in Australia, as far as you know?
No, not really. Nothing. I mean, there was nothing heard about it on mainstream TV, like nothing at all. No
Because
impact whatsoever.
how active is Australia is in this subject? Are they kind of, got their heads buried in the sand, or are they open to it?
To be honest, Al, I don't know, because I haven't reached out to many people, hardly anyone here actually, with my experience. The only person I really did was obviously Mario, because I saw him do his podcast and heard the same words. And my friend, that's Anonymous Shadow Lurker, he's been with me for the last 3 years, also trying to help me understand a lot, because he's a very good researcher. But as in terms in Australia, not. I wouldn't know. I'd be lying to make something up. So
well, you do have Ross, and Ross is a national treasure. I'll tell you that.
Oh well,
Really
we've got
have a lot
Ross,
of
but
yeah.
have I spoken to him? No.
No.
Like, am I in that circle? No.
But he was
So,
obviously, Channel 7, he was obviously promoting it and bringing it up. One of the best documentaries I saw early on when I went to X was one of his documentaries. And so I feel like they got to know, but it doesn't mean the government's going to get involved and they're going to be active. I want to move back now to Mario. We've set the stage. Go ahead and take us through your event now.
Well, I was on duty this one particular night. It's in November. It was extremely cold, between 9 and about 13 degrees. And it was our first night on our 12-hour shifts. There was 3 security policemen, a flight security controller, and I was a team member. And my partner, Michael Johnson, outranked me by 2 months, and he was new to us. He was on vacation relief. My normal partner went home to get married. And I just stepped outside. It was real cold. I had on my long johns and my uniform and so forth, and smoked a cigarette. And when I did, I just happened to look to the east. And this site, November 1, if you look at it on Google Earth, it's just north of a small town named Newell, South Dakota, which is above Sturgis, South Dakota, which is famous for Bike Week. And it's in that northwestern corner of South Dakota. And I think to the west is a town called Belfouche, and north would be the North Dakota border. And anyway, so we have responsibility of 10 missiles. And on this night, I just stepped outside. That's where November 5 is located, where the grid marks are there, longitude, latitude. And I stepped outside to smoke a cigarette, and I looked to my right, and I was only like 20 feet out the door. And the sky there is just so crystal clear. There's no ambient light. There are no buildings. There's no homes. You're just on prairie. You're on buffalo running land. I got to see those a few times running. That's a picture of a site and response team with our armored personnel carriers. And those were just at the end days when I was leaving there. They just kept upgrading the entire time our response capabilities, because I was not in that type of a vehicle. And anyhow, I see this object, and it's at about a 30-degree incline, and it's to my right, up off the horizon. And I thought I knew it was moving, but it was coming toward me. And in tech school, in training, you learn to kind of identify aircraft. I mean, it's part of your job, aerial threats, so you have to learn that. And these light cans on this craft were very big. The whole damn thing was a light. What do I mean? But what am I talking about? But I thought it was 2 B-52 bombers flying one in front and behind each other like this, because they do that when they do their attack runs, but they are very low altitude. They can really they can turn like you wouldn't believe for a bomber. Their wings can flex 26 feet up or down, so they can outturn a few fighter jets. And nobody knows that. I think it's pretty neat. But anyway, I thought they were flying toward me, and that's why the light was so large. But I didn't hear anything. And I'd say it was probably 5 to 7 miles away, 2-mile variance, okay? And so I watched it for a few minutes, still didn't hear anything. I smoked my cigarette, and I even looked away and looked back at it. I thought, well, what the hell is that? So if I held my hand straight out over it like this, it covered the whole illuminated disco. If I closed my fist, it radiated around my fist. So I thought, well, this is curious. So just for something fun to do, I ran inside, and I thought I would flip the security lights, site security lights at this object. If it was an aircraft, if it was one of ours, they'd wave back at you. They'd wave their wings left to right if they see you. And out there, you have to think that turning on these light cans, 12 to 14 of them, about 2 foot in diameter, you would think that whatever's up there is going to see you. And because you'd look like a Roman cannon in the middle of blackness up there. And so I did. So I just flipped them off and on 3 different times, just blip, 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 blip like that. And I bolted outside. And my buddy, Bill Holloman, he was a flight security controller. He was on the phone talking to his wife in Rapid City. And I said, hey, Bill, you got to come check these lights out. We'd worked together for quite some time. He's a really good guy. He was from North Carolina. I used to live in North Carolina. I like people from North Carolina. And so he just kind of waved me off, you know, and I ran back outside and you know, I looked up there when I just looked at the daggone thing. And when I did, it just went off, went on, went off, went on, went off, and came back on. And I went, wow, I just kind of had a flutter in me, you know. I said, well, that's pretty cool. It's got to be an Air Force jet, right? Or a helicopter. Still can't hear anything. It didn't get any closer. It didn't move. It just stayed where it was. So then it kind of concerned me. So I go back in, and my new partner, his name's Michael Johnson, a real light-skinned black guy. It was our first time we'd ever worked together. And he I said in the day room, I said, Michael, come out here and check this out. There's a light to our east. And I don't know what it is. I said, I flashed the sight lights at it. And it did the same thing back to me. He really didn't say too much, and I got his curiosity up, but he finally came outside. So when he did, he sees the object. I said, all right, stand right there. I'll be right back. So I run inside real quick. I tell Bill Holloman again, Bill, you got to come see this. I flipped the lights at it. It flipped lights back at me. So it's got to be in there. He just waved me off again. And I did it 3 more times, and I went back outside. We're standing there together, and it went out, went off, went out, and went on again. Only did it 2 times to my 3 times. I said, holy shit, you see that? He said, yeah. I don't think it's anything. I said, we think it's anything. Can you hear anything? He couldn't hear anything. I couldn't hear anything. So I said, I'm going to do it 1 more time. So I run inside the 3rd time, and I flip the lights at it again, run back out. On my way out, he literally was coming back in. And I said, wait a minute. And as I went out there, it went out. And I just paused and waited. He went on in. It just went out. I didn't see it again. And a few minutes took place. And the 3rd time, it had moved from where it was, and it had moved further to the west, but north. And it just popped back on. And I went, wow, there it is. Well, I was telling myself, just like that, and it just went out, and it didn't come back on. It was just there, and it was gone. So I thought, okay, well, I guess this show is over. So I went back inside, and I said, Bill, you should have seen that. He wasn't worried about it. A few hours passed. I guess this was about 9:20 now. So for about 15 minutes, we played with this thing, running in and out. A little bit of excitement. And we only had 3 channels of TV at that time. So right about midnight, they all go off. And when it happened, it was, I guess, it was a few minutes after 12, we got an alarm that rings the MCC phone in the flight security controller's office. And it's one of those phones that you have to answer. It makes a really nasty sound that you have to answer. You can't
ignore it.
Yeah, it's an emergency phone. Answer me. So I hear on the way there, I hear him say, yes, sir, sit 4, November 5, which is a serious alarm. We've had them before, but you don't usually start out a rotation or a tour of duty those 3 days with a sit 4. And so we got our safety briefings, our code tables, our weapons, and so forth. And the vehicle was plugged in outside. Those temperatures, I think, Anna, you guys use centigrade, right? So we were between 9 and 13 degrees. I can't convert that right off the bat. Maybe do that, Ray Rock. And
so winter time, right?
Yeah, it's November. It's very cold. Snow on the ground. Snow's different there, though. You can't make a snowball out of it. It's just very dry. If you try to make a snowball and hit it, it just glows like a talcum powder. So loaded up our weapons and so forth, jumped in the vehicle and took off. And travel time was about 15 minutes. So we went out the gate, took a left. And these are dirt roads mainly that we're traveling on, maintained by, they're state roads, but they're clay roads. They're very nice roads. I think you can pretty much go from east to west through the whole state on a dirt road if you choose to. We took a left and went a quarter mile, took another left and went up to Highway 79. And as the road bed goes, it kind of dips down and then it comes back up toward the bed of the highway to keep moisture and so forth off the road during the wintertime. When it did, I looked to my 4 o'clock position, and I'm the passenger in this vehicle now. We got on our parka, our flat pants, bunny boots, everything, weapons. And I looked at about the 4 o'clock position and I see this pulsating light or pulsation, red, orange kind of, way, way out in the distance. And it's over by November 5. It had to be looking about 7 miles across the plains.
So what was your initial thought on that? That's one of the questions I had for you when you first saw it.
Honestly, a transformer, an electrical transformer.
Like it blew up or something? Or?
Yeah, that's what I thought initially. But but once again, you're talking about the town of Newell, and I'll get there in a second. And I said, Michael, what do you think? You think that's that object over there? And he didn't even respond. He didn't know what I was talking about. Maybe I said it out of time or something. But as we got up to the highway and at the stop sign, took a right. We're on Missile Road. That's what it's called today. Took a right on Highway 79. No oncoming traffic. There is nothing but road and the stars, And we take a right and we're on top of this plateau now. We're going down toward the city of Newell, the town of Newell. Now that 4 o'clock position became a 1 o'clock position, and you can see this thing pulsating. Again, I'm still thinking transformer or something like that, not anything compared to what I was going to see. And I said, I think that's that object. Do you think it's a helicopter or what? He didn't even answer me. He said, like, whatever. And as we traveled, well, you go down and you get on the more leveled out, and I lost the pulsation, couldn't see it. But I was thinking about it the whole time. It was like 4.5 miles. No, it's like 7 miles down to Newell. And then you come to a stop sign. There's one stop sign and one red light in Newell, South Dakota. The population then was 204, and the population today is about 650. So it hasn't grown much, but super nice people there. And so we took a right at the stop sign. The old house, there's an old house still sitting there. I was there in 21. And it goes out about 1.5 miles, and it drops off from hard top to clay, and it turns to the left, dog legs to the left. And when we did that, this object, the size of a Walmart building, was sitting on top of November 5 Minuteman II missile site, about 10 feet in the air. It was sitting right on top of the blast door, and neither one of us could believe what we were seeing. And as we rolled up to the cattle gate right in front of the missile site, which was the access gate was only maybe 60, 70 feet away. Cattle gates are placed there so the ranchers don't lose their cattle like wandering out on the road, That's where we pulled up at a 45-degree angle. And everything just went crazy right from that.
I want to stop you for a second, though. Because you're trained to protect this missile silo. And so you think they're going to be people, maybe possibly a helicopter could get in there or something. But I mean, what are you thinking when you're looking at this huge object, this pulsing energy, and you're supposed to protect it? Do you ever think to yourself, how am I supposed to do it? What can I do about this thing?
No. Honestly, Dale, that thought or that question is very difficult to answer because you don't know whether to shoot at it, mess yourself, or run.
Yeah.
And
that's what I was trying to get to.
Believe me, all three of those thoughts just blow through your mind chemically at the speed of light because all of a sudden it was there and we were there.
Yeah.
All this, whatever it is, was in complete control of itself being there. It emanated such power and energy that I don't even think there are words to describe that. The
There are no words.
the proximity of it itself was just absolutely overwhelming. And however it displaced time or visual acuity within me, I don't know. But Michael Johnson was lit up in a light that there are no colors on the color chart that I can tell you what they are. I'm supposed to be colorblind, but I saw colors that night. Dust particles floating through the air. Everything was in super slow motion. Every bit of air in that cab was either evacuated or being controlled, knowing its outcome on my physical being and my partners, I believe. And all I could think of was asking for relief. Okay, you're doing something bad, not bad to me, but I'm really terrified here. Can you help me? Will you help me? And I'm not addressing Michael Johnson. I'm thinking I'm thinking above me.
Wasn't it hard to breathe? Wasn't that one of the problems?
Yeah, it wasn't just hard to breathe. It was as if there was a pressure on my chest and I was being pulled up into the single cab F-154 pickup truck. Like I was being pulled up into the back of it, into the back of the glass. And I rolled my window down and I grabbed my black aluminum light, which I've in the past said it was a mag light, got criticized for that because this is in 77 and mag light didn't come out to 79, but there was a black aluminum flashlight, 3-cell, and I owned one, a very prized possession at that time as a security policeman. I grabbed it, no glove on this hand, I had a mitten on this hand, and I pulled myself up, too afraid to step out of the vehicle. I've never been afraid of anything where I wouldn't step out of a vehicle, especially being armed. And I rolled the window down, I pulled myself up on those Western mirrors, and I was in really, really good shape. And when I got up on the windowsill, so my feet were in the seat, and I'm on the windowsill of an F-154 pickup truck, and I reached up and grabbed a blue bubble on top of the cab, on top of the roof, and that's what I held myself up there with, and I took my flashlight at this thing that was just gargantuan. How could they ever see a flash? And I flashed my light at it. Blink, 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 blink. And I just collapsed back down in my seat, put my M16 in my lap between my legs, and I could breathe again. Just that freaking fast.
Wow.
And I turned to Michael Johnson, still lit up like he was. And I said, it's going to be okay, Michael. And I didn't know Michael from Adam's house cat. We had just met that day at our guard mount at our SATAF building back at Ellsworth Air Force Base. He was vacation relief. So I'd never worked with this man before. And he said he was from Chicago, Illinois. His family lived there. He was a single guy, lived in the barracks. So as I'm sitting there in that seat, even though I told him we were going to be okay, I felt something from the right side of the vehicle. Now I've got my beret on my head, my parka on, and my flat pants and everything, my M16 between my legs. I didn't know what else to do. I never answered or said anything on the radio, which we had a normal reporting thing of, protocol of how we report, when we arrive at the site, steps 1, 2, and 3 are in effect. And what we're doing, what I'm finding now, I was the guy that was going to be doing the looking, and that was inner and outer perimeter patrol as to the cause of what the alarm was. Anyway, it was sitting there 10 feet in the ground directly over that blast door. So I don't know how the second part of that alarm could have occurred, because where that alarm took place is in the actual vaults that access that site, which are now decommissioned. And there's 3 of them, so nobody has access to all of them. Each one just has access to one at a time. So I felt something to my right, but before I did, something got my attention. Before I looked to the right, something just got my attention right in the front of our vehicle. And it was like all I know to say, it was like a great big beach ball, but it was black, about 5 to 6 times the size of a beach ball. And it had these vents on it. They were like from top to bottom, these vents, and it was just like a cooling fin on a motorcycle motor. It was vents like that, and this thing was solid black, and it bounced around like a ping pong ball. On our hood, didn't touch anything around us, to the side of us, to over top of us, and all of a sudden it was gone. It was like a pre-check or something. I don't know. And once it was gone, it felt like there was a void for a second. And then I look to my right, and I see these three small beings and a tall one behind them coming toward me from about 20 feet away. And the one on the small one on the right would have been on my left. He had uniforms on, and the one on the left, he had I want to say it was a wand in his belt, and it was what I call a belt, but it looked very wide for the size of the person, of the being it was on, and it had a glowing yellow tip on it, and it really brought my attention to it, and I thinking about it, I don't know the fear I felt, but I started smelling this ammonia or shrimp-like smell, and it just permeates every part of you. It just fills your, I don't know how to describe that. It just fills your senses with this smell, and you can't get away from it. And I never knew if Michael Johnson smelled it or not. That's one thing when we talk later, we'll get to that. But the tall one, he was about a shoulder ahead of them. Now, he had this same color thing on his chest right here. And his facial construction was different than the three small beings. He seemed to be, different. I've seen some drawings of what I think they are, but he was different than the three small ones.
Well, real quick, is there any possibility that the smaller ones were grays and the larger one was a Nordic, or were they different?
Completely different. I mean, as I said, I know what Nordics look like, and I mean, being that what I've seen in the pictures I've seen and drawings that I've seen, that's what I mean by that. And they weren't anything in the human form like that, other than arms and legs. And of course, those appendages weren't quite the same on the tall one as they were the small grays. They were so different. The hand was different that I could see. Its facial features were different and more contorted. Just different altogether, different jawline, everything.
Do you think the spear, that not the big one, but the small one that was like bouncing around with the vents, do you think that was a probe, or what do you think that might have been?
Well, back in '77, there was no talk of a drone. Who knew the word drone? We weren't allowed. We never had drones back then, or if they did, they were super top secret. Run by later on DARPA, I guess, but.
I said
probe. We never had anything like that.
I said like a probe.
Yeah, it could be that. We never had those. That wasn't part of our in our dictionary out there. Aircraft, rockets, okay, but there was never talk of drones or a probe, something that could fly like that. We have nothing that can move just that way of that probe. So
Back then,
a drone, today's drone would come close to it, but nothing like what that could do, the capabilities of that and the size of it. And you can see what's powering a drone. You can't see what's powering something like that. It just
Rob had something he wanted to say.
Yeah.
In 1977, the computing capabilities on the Voyagers is equated to like a Texas Instruments handheld calculator back then. So we didn't have the electronics to build anything like that. They had the most advanced, sophisticated electronics crammed into Voyagers. It wasn't the size of a hand calculator, but that was the calculating capacity of memory. That was it. So, it's just absurd that the people think, well, that could be drones or whatever. We didn't have the electronics and the microcircuitry at the time to build anything, even if they knew how to build it.
Amazing.
It wasn't there.
Do you think it's a possibility that probe went out in advance to make sure it was safe for the different aliens to come out, or is that just speculation?
I honestly don't know. I mean, did it have something to do with that ammonia smell? I mean, because I've got an M16 rifle between my legs. My partner's got his in the weapons rack behind me. So, I mean, I'm pretty much ready to go. But if it sensed that, which I think it could, or was I going to use it, or was that something to calm me down, or but I never thought about using a weapon. That's the thing about it. It was just at that point it was an appendage, something that I didn't need, and I wouldn't use. I didn't feel danger like that. I didn't feel life-threatening danger. It was a situation of it was forced. Okay, it was forced, but I still didn't. I don't even know how to say if I could have defended my life. Of course, you just don't think, you can't think that way. You're so overwhelming.
And that's the thing. It is. It's very overwhelming. So I mean, I know the overwhelming that you felt.
Yeah, it's very difficult. But and I passed out, and the next thing, honestly, that I knew the condition of everything before I went to sleep, passed out, whatever you call it. Didn't know what happened to Michael Johnson. I mean, where we were, I mean, it was just so bright. It was like the sun, not even the sun, but it's like a welder's arc light was, the size of a Walmart building right next to our vehicle. And as tall as I could see, I mean, this thing was gargantuan. You just have to understand this thing was huge. Nothing that I've ever seen in my life compared or prepared me for seeing, like 2 aircraft carriers 10 feet off the ground hovering over a missile site. That size of mass, and I don't know if you've seen a real aircraft carrier in your life, but they are huge, man. And it's like 2 of those together in a sphere and with energy.
I was a Navy guy.
So okay. Yeah. But so I opened my eyes, and it just seemed like a flash, like I was okay. And I looked, and I was in complete darkness. I mean, black darkness. And then I grabbed my weapon, because then I felt fear. And I looked around, and Michael Johnson was sitting to my left at a driver's seat still, and he was just locked up like this on his steering wheel. This blue plastic F-150 Ford steering wheel that every interior had on it. And I said, Michael, where are we? What happened? What happened? Nothing. I reached over and I pushed him. I said, Michael, his eyes are open. He's breathing. He's looking straight ahead, and he's just locked up on that steering wheel. And I shook him. I tried to pull his hands off, tried to pull his right arm off the steering wheel. I couldn't do it. I said, holy shit, man, what's going on with you? I even stuck my finger in his ear, I pushed his face, his cheek, nothing, no response, just the way he was. I hit the door handle, and it's just the one lever you pull up. And I stepped out with my right foot, and I stepped in mud. And at the same time I did that radio cracked to life, and it said, WSC, which is Wing Security Controls, November 1. Do you copy? Just clear as day, just like that. And I said, Michael, you're going to get that? They're calling us. No response. I said, well, I guess I will. So I picked up the microphone. And I said, Senior Airman Woods, WSC, yes, we're okay. We are here. And he says, where are you? And I had to think a minute. I had to gather my thoughts. And I said, I don't know where we are. I said, I'm not sure. He goes, what do you mean you're not sure? And I said, I'm sorry, sir. I'm really not sure where I am, where we are. He says, anybody need medical attention? And I said, well, my partner he's grabbed onto this steering wheel, and I can't get him off of it. And he seems to be in something's wrong with him.
That was my question, is what do you think was causing? Was it terror? Was it they did something to him? What in the world caused him to be in the condition he was in, and yet you weren't in that condition? So I'm trying to figure out why it affected him differently than it did you.
I have absolutely no answer for that.
I think a different constitution, because the Pascagoula abduction.
And it didn't end there. It did not end there. That's the thing.
We talked about that earlier, though. You remember? Talked about 2 people having the same event and looking at it and perceiving it completely different. So that's kind of where I was leading to.
Yeah.
So
It really worried me. And I was so afraid myself inside. I didn't really know how to react to it myself, but I really didn't. I thought, I didn't know what had happened, and I couldn't put anything together of what I saw, that yellow wand, and those beings. And I was like, where did all that go? Oh, and I went, oh, we were on a response November 5, a SIT 4. That's really a serious alarm. And I looked to the east, and it's starting to get light. And I went, I mean, really, it was just a realization that I see a blue sky kind of coming, a little lighter. And there's an old western tree that's just to the north, or to the west of that position I was in, and it's still there today. Looks like an old hanging tree. Not a branch on it, but I mean, green branches, just an old hanging tree. And I looked at my watch, and it was after 6 a.m. So we arrived at site at about 12:48, 12:52, somewhere in there. And then so we had over 5 hours of missing time. And I stepped in mud when I got out of the vehicle, and there was a white wall next to me. It wasn't a wall, it went up at about a 45-degree angle. And it was as far in either direction that I could see. I still didn't really know where my direction was, but I kind of got an inkling when the sun came up. And I didn't know what that was. So Wing Security Control said to maintain a 1-minute security check so they could triangulate our position. And I'd done some of that, or never done any of that, but trained in it, or trained with it in Security Police Tech School, but would never used it. It was just one of those modules you talk about, but it was never put into place. So that's what they did, and that's how they found us. And it was probably about 6:45 when Sergeant Garza came over the hill and came toward my vehicle and stopped about 40 foot short. And I got out. I went around the truck to try and meet him. And still, the whole time this is taking place, I'm trying to arouse Michael Johnson to just acknowledge something. He's breathing and everything, but he's just
catatonic.
He's a lot human being, man. How does that even happen? It just amazes me that, it gets me today to remember seeing him that way. And I wouldn't see him again for 18 days or so. But anyway, as I approached Sergeant Garza, he said, just hold on right there, Mario. I said, tell me what's going on, man. He goes, just stay right there. I'm not allowed to talk to you about it, which is typical. That's what they do. We really thought we'd done something wrong. I thought that's what I felt like. That's the way they make you feel, like you have screwed up here. You've really done something bad. It's different for enlisted than it is officers. And I have a lot of good friends that are officers. So don't think that I'm just pounding, enlisted guys, saying that. But upper level ranks think that way. So they escorted us. I had to have him help me move Michael Johnson over in the seat. I unbuckled him, and we just slid him over. He's probably about 165 pounds or so. Locked him, seatbelted him back in. I followed out, and there were no previous tracks when I left out of there. There were no car tracks that we drove in there in any way. Our vehicle was facing the only way that it could possibly come out of where it was. Because right on the outside of Michael Johnson, had he been able to open his door and take a step out, there was a retention pond down there about 30 feet away and below him, and it was frozen at the time. Little did I know, but we were behind the Newell Lake Reservoir Dam, which is probably about 8.5 miles away from November 1 control and about 9.5 to 10 miles away from November 5 missile site. So where we lived, where we were found, and where we went is like a Pythagorean triangle. I think I looked at that on Google Earth, and I think it encompasses 21.5 miles. So we went back to November 1.
Well, let's hold down for a second. I want to make sure that people understand what you just described. You're next to the Newell Dam. You didn't know it at the time.
Newell Lake Reservoir Dam.
Yeah, it was all covered with snow, and so at first you had no clue. But you talked about no tracks. What you're saying is it's like something set you guys and the truck exactly where it was. It didn't drive in. It was placed there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and these are only 2-wheel drive vehicles, and this was in snow that's 2+ feet deep, and the only place that was mud is where we were. It's the craziest thing, you know, when I put it all together and thought about it. And I mean, even the vehicle was rotated to the south. Had it been the other way around, there was no way to back it out or to turn it around on the far end, which would have been the northern end of the backside of that dam. And we were at the very deepest part, in the center part of that dam's rear wall, because the north end had a slough there. So we couldn't have turned around there. I mean, really, it was like 5 feet on the other side of that driver's side door, and we'd have been off in a great big retention hole down there. But it's the weirdest thing to think back how things lined up, you know. So it was about 10 or 12 minutes going back to November 1, and they took us all the way into the gate. And the other two backup alert teams. There were 3 total teams looking for us. That was 6 security policemen. And escorted us back to November 1. They went ahead and peeled off and went back to where they came from. But as we got in there, of course, the flight security controllers there, you know, the one, my guy that was on duty, the 2 officers, facility manager, all the response team people. So everybody was at the site, and my flight chief and my assistant flight chief were there. And they just came upon the vehicle, you know, like boom, you know. And I said, I got to have help with Michael Johnson. I said, I don't know what's wrong with him. And they didn't even say anything. They just took him straight to one of the back rooms, I guess, to the facility manager's room. And they took me I went into the day room and sat down, and they just started bantering me with questions. And I just had to sit there for a couple of hours and answer every single thing, you know, that was asked. And the only thing that I held back was being that I was a member of the anyone in security police that deals with nuclear weapons. Their personal reliability program, and if at any time that's in question, you lose your clearances and you won't work in that career field anymore. If there's not openings for you elsewhere, then they can put you out. And I was a new guy, and I was 23 years old at the time. And I'd gotten married, and I wanted to do the right things, you know. And that's why I never relayed what I saw out my window. I did relay the vehicle or the craft, the size of it, and everything up to that point, but I never would talk about what I saw outside the window. And I answered all their questions for a couple of hours until I didn't even get any water or anything during that time. And our day room was part of the kitchen area, or our break room area there. And I finally told my flight chief, I said, Sergeant Gray, I said, I need to go to the restroom. I really didn't have to. And why I didn't, I can't believe it. But I just wanted to get away from it for a minute. So I went into that restroom, and there's 2 stalls, 2 sinks, 2 showers, and they're really nice facilities. I mean, you go there and you live, you know. Been snowed in for 2 weeks there at a time. Strangest thing is seeing somebody that smokes. A lot of guys smoked back then, and I've seen people pull rank on a butt can. You know, we had 6 or 7 butt cans in the day room. I've seen people pull rank on butt cans because nobody can get to a store to buy cigarettes. It's a trip. So I go to this restroom, and I just went into one of the stalls, and I just closed the door, and I just wanted to sit on that toilet and not think about anything, just sit down for a minute. And I did. And all of a sudden, I literally just put my hand on my head like that, because that's what I did on my knee. And my hearing just went wee, just screaming in my ear. And also, and everything got super light green, like a pea green or something, just got super, super green. And I couldn't hear or something other than that ringing. And all of a sudden I felt as if I was leaving my body. And honestly, with my eyes closed, I had a clear path of going through my body and out my feet. Now, I don't know what's significant about that, but with my eyes closed, I could move. I felt like, and it was very scary of everything that I didn't know if it was lack of sleep, because I had been up for literally 2 days without sleep, and whatever happened. And I felt as if I got down somewhere in my chest. I was going to try this. I got down here somewhere and I opened my eyes. I guess that was my control measure to stop or to go. I don't know. I'm just talking here. And I saw 4 furry feet of a German Shepherd and a set of Cochrane polished security police boots behind that German Shepherd. And it was a drug dog. They had come out to, to inspect us, make sure there were no drugs involved. And I opened my eyes and I said, that's nice. I said, I'm glad you're here. And he goes, hey, Mario, how you doing? He knew me, but I didn't know him. And I said, he was in law enforcement. I was security. So anyway, I said, my bag's out there in the day room. He said, no, I've already been through that. He goes, you're good. He goes, I just came here to check on you, man. He told me, I think we had played tennis together before. Yeah, I just came to check on you. I'm sure you did. Okay. But anyway, he left and I went out, I went to the sink and I still had on my fatigues and long johns and stuff. And I just took the water from that sink, ice cold, and just flushed myself with it. I mean, I really just gave myself a bath right in that sink, And I was all wet up. I looked terrible when I walked out of there, but I felt a whole lot better. And when I did get out of there, I walked back in the day room and Sergeant Gray said, he says, grab your stuff. He goes, we're going to take you to the SATAP building. He says, the commander wants to talk to you. I said, yes, sir. So I knew that was going to happen. So it was about an hour ride back, but I kept asking about Michael Johnson before I left. And they said, don't worry about him. We'll take care of him. I guess the assistant flight chief, Sergeant Hawkins, took him back to base. I guess they took him to medical directly. They didn't tell me. So we talked on the way there for that hour. It was a very uncomfortable time, the whole time back and to the base. And then we went in through Box Elder, the back gate, and we went to the SATAP building, which was an old hangar, a B-52 hangar converted into office area. And I reported to Commander Spraker, Colonel Spraker. When I went in the room, there was first you knock on the door and you go in and report yourself and the whole 9 yards, very formal type introduction. And I know I looked disheveled somewhat, but I couldn't help that. It was just the way it was. And he was there, the assistant base commander was there, and to my left was a guy in a gray suit, kind of tall. I guess he was a federal guy. And then there was a Captain Jack Reed, and then there was a young OSI officer. Well, Captain Jack Reed was OSI also, but the young, I guess, enlisted OSI airman was a guy named Rick Doty, who's been on a whole bunch of podcasts and a whole lot of things. And I remembered his face, believe it or not, because he was younger than I was at the time, and I just really keyed on his face for some reason. I had no idea 40-something years later I'd be seeing it, and he'd be one of the only ones that could verify that briefing ever took place, which he has. And we've been on a podcast together and talked about it and so forth. And I've got his number down. He has mine. I've got some emails from him.
Last podcast, I think you were still trying to connect with him, weren't you?
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, maybe so. I guess this was January 17th of 2023. So that's how recent it was that we talked. He's stating here how he listened to my interview at Ellsworth, and it's pretty cool, really. Yeah. But I was glad he responded because I went through everything to talk to him, and I'd call his number, I'd send him emails and everything. So it finally happened. So we got on a podcast together, and that's what I wanted, him and I together, so we could discuss it and there'd be other people there, So I went through everything that they asked me, and I felt, again, as if I'd done something wrong and I was going to be chastised for it, or, Article 15 or something. Something just didn't feel right. And after about 2.5 hours with Commander Spraker, because they just literally laughed at me when I told them the size of the craft and, the radiation from it or what it felt like, and, I told them I flipped the lights at it, and they didn't even think about that. They really didn't say much about that at all. I just made certain that I never mentioned what I saw out my window.
Right, the aliens.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure that I talked about, the the drone or whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure if I did. I can't remember that, but that part. But so after all said and done, I guess now it's about somewhere around 1 o'clock, and I'd been up a really long time. And he said, "Well, we're going to send you over to the flight surgeon's office." He said, "Flight surgeon would like to take a look at you, just make sure everything's okay." I'd never been to a flight surgeon's office, so I was, well, what is this? What does that entail? Because that'd be something I damn sure don't like, I guarantee it. And so they sent me over there in the colonel's car, in a staff car with a driver. When I got there, that Rick Doty and that Captain Green were there. I can't remember the guy in the tweed suit there or not. And there were 2 flight surgeons and a nurse. So I went up, sat down, I got down in my t-shirt and some boxers. And it was cold because, it was wintertime there. So he looked at my knees, all my joints and everything, ears, eyes, nose, down my throat. And they went off and talked for a few minutes. And he came back, and one of the shorter guy, the shorter flight surgeon, he says, he pulled out a latex glove and he popped it on his wrist, and that I just thought really bad of that. I went, oh boy, that's not what I didn't want to see that. I didn't want to experience that.
No guy would.
He goes, I need to take a look at your gums. And I went, what? It was just off the wall. He goes, I need to take a look at your gums. He said, can you open your mouth, please? So I said, sure. So I opened my mouth, and man, with these 2 fingers, he just went all through my mouth and just stopped and squeezed and did all kind of stuff for, I don't know, for a few minutes. And it's very uncomfortable. Somebody have their fingers in a glove in your mouth. All down on the bottom, on the roof of your mouth. And I couldn't, I was just uncomfortable. So he finished, and they chatted for a second, with their back. They kind of turned away from me. They chat for a second. And then the taller guy, he said, Senior Airman Woods, he said, we need to take some skin samples. We got a couple of burns on your body. And I said, what? I didn't feel anything or think anything. He says, yeah. He goes, the back of this hand, he says, is burned. Can you see that? And he held my hand up, and I it did look kind of brown, I'm an ex-Tampa boy, so I know what a sunburn's like in Tampa, Florida, And it did feel tender, and I hadn't even thought about that before. So he took a skin sample off the back of my hand, took 2 of them off my hand, and then he took one from right up here above my right eye. And each one, whatever tool he used, it went in the vial with the cork, or with the sealer on top of it by itself. And then the one off my face, he did the same thing with, and he put it in a different one. They laid it in a different vial, and they laid it on this silver tray. And that's the last I saw of that. And then they allowed me to get dressed, and it took me a few minutes, and I got some water or something, and back to the commander's office I went. When I got there, reported back in, he handed me a security police like report form, which came in duplicates of 3. So you had to press really hard, and a Skillcraft pen like I've got right here, good old government Skillcraft. And I had to print, which I do very well, the entire incident, and in a room next to where we were meeting. I guess it was a small conference room. So that took me maybe an hour and a half to do that. And once I got back there, I was asked a few more questions. And then I was allowed to call my wife around 3 o'clock, and she came to pick me up, which she thought was extremely strange. And of course, to finish the whole thing, once it was all said and done, and I turned in the form, which I'd finished filling out, as Captain Jack Green, he approached Commander and gave him a form, which he in turn read to me, was a non-disclosure type agreement. And it said that as long as I was, in this career field, carrying a weapon around, nuclear weapons, that I would never speak or divulge any of this to any kind of known media or stations or newspapers, which there wasn't anything like what it is today. And of course, I signed that, not thinking I'd ever say anything about it again, which I didn't. And but she knew something was going on, and especially because I had a little Band-Aid up here, and I had a 2 on the back of my hand, and I should have been gone for 3 days, and I was only gone for the day before, and then the next day I was back. So I got the rest of that time off, and then a 4-day break, and then before I went back again. But they never, I was never assigned back to November Control anymore. They sent me to the alternate command post, which was Kilo Control, and it's to the west of November. It's actually a sister flight, and meaning the next closest launch control facility to where you are. But it's also the alternate command post for all the other 14 launch control facilities in case the base gets knocked out. That's where all orders would come from. So then I was always left to be a team member and directly under the scrutiny of my flight chief and my assistant flight chief. And then 8 months later, I received an assignment for a year remote in Korea, and I went to my commander upon receiving it. I was promoted to sergeant, and that was in April of '78. So that came kind of quick. And then I'd gone with my orders. I went to my commander right away, and I asked him if I could, if I could go accompany. The company meant 2 years. If you volunteer for the extra year, you could take your spouse with you. And he slammed his fist on that desk, Colonel Ralph E. Spraker. I'll never forget it. And he said, "No, sir, young man, you were going remote, and that's all there is to it." So I don't know if something happened to where he was looked down upon for what I went through. I'm really not sure. And,
taking it out on you.
Excuse me. Yeah.
And taking it out on you.
Yeah. But backing up, I'm going to go back 18 days after the whole incident happened.
Yeah, that's what I want to get to, Michael Johnson.
I lived in Hainesway Apartments, and I was literally thinking about this guy. And a knock came at my door, and these are internal apartments. You have like your door that's in a hallway, and then you have a balcony. As a back door, just simple. And I opened the door, and there he stood. And I said, "Hey, Michael," because we had never really sat down and talked. He goes, "Hey, Mario," he says, "I hope you don't mind." He says, "I asked some of the guys in the barracks where you lived," and he said, "I just need to talk to you about what we went through." And I said, "Man, absolutely, get in here." And up to this point, I had never told her, as I was instructed not to. I had not told her because I thought she'd think I was a raving idiot, or maybe she did. I don't know. She's not here today, so maybe so. But he came in, and I introduced him, and I gave him a drawing booklet and a pen, and we started talking about the whole thing. So it was out then, and he sat at the coffee table, and I went over to the dinner table, which was round, separate, separated. And I said, "You draw it. You remember how it looked, and I'll draw how I remember it looked." And he drew the same craft that I drew. And to the best of my knowledge, he even drew the ball bouncing around the front of the hood. He remembered the smell. And the whole time I'm asking him, "Man, how could you know all this when you were locked up like you were?" He goes, "I don't know." He said, "Until I heard 'Do not fear.'" He said, "I couldn't believe what I was hearing." And I said, "You heard that too?" And he said, "Yes, I heard it." So, we talked for probably 2.5, 3 hours that day. And
did he have any explanation for being locked up? Did he have any idea what that was? And
to him, he wasn't. He said, "I was fine." And I said, "Do you remember, you don't remember
your fingers right on the steering wheel?"
Yeah. Do you remember how I got your hands off the steering wheel? Unbelted you and slid you over? And he just kept looking at me. He says, "No, no, no."
Wow. So to him, it's like he was just sitting there.
Huh?
It's almost as if what happened to my husband. It's almost like they've paralyzed him.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But he didn't know it though. That's the weird part about it.
And he heard it. He heard "Do not fear." He remembered the craft, and it just blew me away. I said, "You heard all that?" "Yeah, I heard it. I heard it."
All right.
But this is where the mystery thickens, though, right? This is where it thickens, because what happened to Michael Johnson?
That's the last time we ever seen him. Don't know.
18 days after the event.
Yeah.
And you guys had 2.5 hours, whatever you talked. I'm sure there was a lot of things you talked about, but it seems like Michael Johnson has gone the way of the dodo. You know, you've looked, you've done everything in your power to try to find him. I have found him for you, though. I want you to know that. I think he's the new speaker for the House.
Honestly, I would absolutely go nuts to find him. I mean, believe me, AARO's looking for him. And on every podcast and every show, I always ask about it. Man, I just received something today. I think I sent it to a few people. And Martin Willis, I don't know, you know Martin Willis? He's a podcaster. He's a great friend of mine. We're going to meet and have lunch in South Carolina, Myrtle Beach, I think, sometime this month. But anyway, this fella that he knows sent him an email today, and pretty certain that he knows a Michael Johnson that passed, but relayed some information on to his loved ones about this whole thing. And the other flip side of that is that a person that was a deputy sheriff in Newell, South Dakota, his father was a highway patrolman. The highway patrolman, as I discovered in 77, they were Wing Security Control dispatched or called state and local law enforcement to look for us.
Right.
So we had 6 security policemen, 3 patrols looking for us, 2 men in each vehicle, fully armed. And then we had 2 deputy sheriffs, both from the town of Sturgis, which is 29 miles south. And then a state trooper that was his region. And this is the son of the state trooper. And when the state trooper was literally dying, I've got the email right here today. He was on his deathbed, and he asked his father, he said, do you remember those 2 Air Force boys that were lost due to something, in Newell, South Dakota? And he said, yes, I do. Wow. And I met his son when we were filming with Discovery Plus without even knowing it. And so this has kind of come full circle. And literally today, I just got those emails. I'll send it to you and show you. And it's, I'm going to call this guy tomorrow, and he's in South Dakota, and see how it is. But to find Michael Johnson is the other part of the key, because, no matter what I say, people are always skeptical when you have, one guy coming forward and the other guy not there.
My suspicion is he's probably dead and probably been dead for quite a while, and that's why you can't find him.
Well, I
tell no tales.
He has to be just a little bit older than I am, because he outranked me by 2 months. Right. So he probably had 6 months on, maybe older than I am or something.
Okay, let's kind of continue on a little bit. What about, you mentioned when you were 6, you mentioned that incident, so we don't have to talk about it. So I was going to ask if you had any other incidents. So you mentioned that one, but then there was another one you told me about, and
2017. Yeah.
2017.
Yeah. December 17th, 2017 to be exact. It right here in this house in my bedroom. And I always question when people say, I was floated out of my house and after something happened, 60 years ago, what possible interest could I give to, honestly, any extraterrestrials today? What do I have to offer, that they would be looking for, that they would come down here in a craft and look at me? But this thing did happen, and I was asleep in my bed, and I have a back room back here. That's my room where I work rotating shifts, and that's my room. My son was here, and I think his girlfriend was here as well. And at about 4:10, this one particular morning on the 17th of December, I awoke standing up at the foot of my bed, looking to the north wall. And in that north wall, just 1.5 feet or 2 feet away from me, is a dresser. And there's another dresser next to it. I have a lot of t-shirts, so I have dressers. But that hole appeared, was closing as I realized where I was, which you can see my footprints at the bottom of my bedpost. And I'm looking, and on the outer rim of that circle, there was like a couple of sparks that just like faded away, like it would be a sparkler, it fades away at the end. It was like that. And then it was gone. And then I was like, what did I just see? And then all of a sudden I hear all of these alarms or something going off in my house, and the lights that are on, like during the night, like low level lighting, was all flickering. Everything was flickering that was on. And all of a sudden my room door popped open and my son goes, Dad, what are these noises? And I said, son, I don't know. So I didn't know if it was being broken into or not. So I grabbed a pistol and I'm going to do a search and a clear through my house. I mean, right now, there's one sitting next to me right now. But so I'm going through the house, and when I go into the kitchen area, the oven, the microwave, the refrigerator, the dishwasher, all these things have low voltage alarms in them.
Wow.
If you've never heard one, you don't know what they sound like. I guess they have one, for a technician to be able to see what's going on with a voltage regulator or something. I don't know. But they were all going off and all the lights were just going up and down, up and down. And he came out into the living room and I was coming out of the back room back there. And I said, I don't know what the heck this is, And I checked all the doors and I just unplugged them. I didn't unplug the stove, but it stopped. I didn't unplug the refrigerator, but it stopped. But the microwave I unplugged, it didn't want to stop. And I said, I don't know what's happening, son. I said, I guess I'll call Georgia Power at 8 a.m., or whenever they open. So I said, I got to go back to bed. So I went back to bed and thought about that for a minute. And it was about 7:30, and my son comes to my door. He just pops on the door and he says, hey, Dad, Georgia Power's here. He was like, I said, what? I said, did you call him? He goes, no, I didn't call him. I said, okay. So I get up and I look out my bathroom window and I see, I'm on a 1 acre lot. So I'm about 200 feet back from the road and about the same to the back fence back here in the woods, And I see this team out there and they're digging and all kind of stuff. So I go out there and I introduce myself. And the guy says, you Mr. Woods? And I said, yeah, man. I said, what the heck's going on? He goes, well, I've got you rigged back up for power. He goes, I've got a transformer on your back deck back there where your trash can's located in your box. And I said, a transformer? What do you mean? He goes, you burned a leg out of your house. There's 3 legs of whatever voltage that is that feeds your home, I didn't really know what that was, that I do now. And I said, oh, wow, man. I said, did it mess up the whole neighborhood? Well, naturally, when your cable's out, everybody else's is out, or so you hope, right? So that's what I thought, everybody else is out too. And he looked at me funny. He goes, no, just your house. This house was built in 96. I said, how could that even happen? He goes, we don't know. He said, but our control board downtown in Brunswick, he said, you lit it up like the 4th of July. I said, I lit it up like the 4th of July. He says, yeah. He said, you overloaded the voltage carrying current of this line and it blew it out. It melted it. And I went, I don't even know how to respond on that. But then he had me jumpered in, like I said, with a transformer on the back of my battery operated, some kind of transformer. I got pictures of it all. And it stayed back there for 2 days and they got it straightened out. And it was a couple of weeks later, I was cutting my yard one day and this boy that used to live here in the neighborhood, he came by and he just put the window down asking about my son. They were, friends growing up, shooting bows and all that stuff. And he goes, hey, Mr. Wood, what was going on in your backyard the other morning? And I said, what? He goes, man, I left for work. And he goes, your backyard looked like Hollywood searchlights back there. Wow. And I said, Wade, you've been in my yard. I've just got spotlights on the end of the house, which is right by my bedroom there. And he goes, oh no. He goes, these were like Hollywood searchlights, like 40 of them. And I went, man, I don't even know what you're talking about. I didn't know how to come back with him on that, And he just drove off like nothing happened. And I've never forgotten it. And then I guess it just blew me away. It's like, oh my God, what could that have possibly been?
Let me move on to the next question. I've asked Anna it already. If you had a chance, or if you had a choice, not a chance, but a choice, would you want this to happen again, or would you rather it not?
Wonder if she can hear you.
Huh?
Can you hear Anna?
Yes.
Oh,
I was asking you, Mario. If you, because I asked Anna that question before. Now I'm asking you that question. I want to ask because you're both experiencers, and I just think it's the right question to ask, realizing not everybody's answer is going to be the same, but I just wanted to see if yours is the same or if it's different.
well, I think you're where you're supposed to be, period. Whatever happens, happens. And either, all of us, any of us that have had some type of incident like this, you're either in the right place at the right time or the right place at the wrong time. It's just that simple. I don't think we can have a choice whether we would accept it or not, unless they just wipe our minds, and as they've done to many. But
I'm just saying, if you had a choice,
I'd probably say it's okay with me. I'd do it. Yeah, I'd still do it, just for the knowledge alone, just what I've learned.
Just such a unique situation. Like I said, not everybody's experiences that way.
I'd like to know that I could understand it better if it were to happen today in real time, not their time, or not a slowed down time, or I mean, just as we're speaking today, if any of us could get over the actual appearance of a being standing right here, right now, just appeared, or you open that door and there's one standing there, what is your initial thought? What do you do initially right now? Do you fall to your knees and you worship, or do you stand there and put a hand out, or do you fall apart of what you're seeing? Now, I know there's good and bad and everything. It could be something really, really bad standing there, and it could be something really good too. So I always thought if I could I put myself in that position when I opened that door, why did I not walk around that truck? Didn't need a weapon, just walk around that truck and walk toward that thing. Why didn't I do that? Why couldn't I do that?
Well, you started asking
because of fear.
Yeah.
So you've started to answer this question, but I want to, because you guys said there were some parallels, so I want to start drawing some of them. The one thing I caught from this interview that you both said was they were in control.
Yes.
Anna talked about that. They were in control of her situation. And Mario, you said the exact same thing. And so you didn't have any control. What are some other similarities? We're going to close this thing off. We're getting towards the end. We're closing in on 3 hours. So I think we've done pretty good. But what are some of the similarities? Because when Anna heard your story, it really compelled her in the sense, and it's kind of like with Britt, Britt Elders, that was on mine. That really, she really connected with that. So what were some of the things that you guys, and Anna, you can answer this question as well, that where you guys kind of see the parallels, that kind of you feel like you've gone through even though it's maybe different entities, you've gone through a very similar experience?
Well, definitely, first of all, from my point of view, would be the words "do not fear."
Right.
Because like you said previously, people say, "Oh, don't be afraid," or this. It was those 3 words.
Exact words.
And I think upon speaking to Mario previously, like he only knows a handful of people who have heard those 3 words mentioned to them by the ETs in exactly that format. So I think that was the big thing that drew me straight.
They were the exact words, and you're like, aha, this is exactly what I heard.
Yes.
Yeah, because Betty Hill didn't use those exact words. It was much longer than that. But I can understand how you go, wow, those were exactly what I heard.
Yes, that's exactly how I felt.
And what about the fact that even though yours was in 2 abduction experiences and Mario's was 1, there is another commonality. And I asked Mario about it, just to get clarification. It wasn't like they were the same beings. But Mario, were they 2 separate beings in your situation? Was the taller one just taller of that species, or do you think that was a separate species?
It would be difficult to see the small grays because they were so uniform, grow into what was behind them. Additionally, it seemed like the taller one was the one in charge. And I didn't see them walking. It was the strangest thing. Is I was almost as if they're just off the ground and floating toward you or something. You know.
So
yeah, I noticed that as well. I couldn't see my ones walking.
You know, normally when people walk, you have that head bob, you know, going up and down like that. But from striding, you know, it was none of that.
To glide.
It was just a glide right to you, you know.
I've heard other experiencers say the exact same thing. Any other similarities, or are we going to close this one down?
Well, I think her graves and what I saw as graves, I think are pretty much the same, you know. And she's had the cleaner view of Nordics, you know, which I would really like this. I would really like to have an encounter with them, you know.
I'd love everyone to have an encounter with them. But one thing I did notice, maybe not between similarities, but between the Nordics and the Greys had the red triangle, like patch on the where
those
the
drawings,
Nordics had a white.
Drawings you sent me had that also.
Yeah, the Nordics had a white triangle.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, the suits were another thing I thought that was interesting, is the fact that, you know, when Betty and Barney Hill talked about it, when others have talked, it's like they have some kind of a suit on, uniform almost to say. And so that's exactly what Anna described. I don't know if Mario's experience was exactly like that or not, but that seems to be another common thing.
Well, so they had uniforms, no doubt.
Yeah, which is one of the things when you start seeing so much commonality and you hear different stories from people in different parts of the world. My goodness, Hannah's clear over in Australia. You know, you did this at South Dakota. People all over the world are experiencing similar things. It's like, how in the world can you know, how could you coordinate something like that?
You can't.
If it wasn't
That's
true.
the thing, you can't.
Yeah, if it wasn't true, you know.
You can't.
Wasn't true.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and, like I said, we're closing in on 3 hours. I want to thank everyone and for being here. Rob, you did a great job bringing a lot of technical insight into it. Mario, you just, you know, you always, like always, you have a great incident to report, and you do it well. And I want to tell you, Anna, for your first time on a podcast, you hit it out of the park.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'm so nervous. But can I ask a favor? And my son wants to come and say hello.
Okay, absolutely. You can get Daisy May too if you want. I feel bad. That was going to be your opening, is to bring Daisy May, but I imagine Daisy May is gone now, outside the room.
Daisy May, come here, girl.
We gotta have a Daisy May sighting. Now, come on, Mario.
Huh?
Oh,
we gotta have a Daisy May sighting.
Don't be scared. He's a bit.
I'm nervous.
Howdy.
Nervous.
Hey, bud, how you doing?
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm Dale.
There's Daisy May right now.
We're friends of your mom from across the other side of the world.
You all right? Yeah, you're on the podcast.
Yeah, your mom did really well.
I'm afraid.
Yeah.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
And then there's Daisy May. Daisy May showed up last time.
Oh,
Hi.
Yeah.
Stay right there.
Well, thank you for coming on, and appreciate meeting
You're
your
welcome,
son as
Dale.
well.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you. And I can see you doing great things.
Well, I feel like there's a purpose behind it. Rob and I talked about it. We don't think it's an accident that him and I have connected, that there's some kind of bigger plan here. And so we're just trying to do our part. I talked about it before, you know, we're 1,000 points of light, and just each one of us are doing our part. And if we continue to do that, we're going to get to disclosure, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop us. You know,
that's exactly right. And I think that's what needs to happen. Everyone needs to stop being so scared and, like, you know, do not fear. Come forward, tell your stories and incidences, and, you know, unite.
Exactly. And I thought both of you, the way you told it, you know, is very believable. And I believe you. You're my friends to begin with, but I just thought the way you presented it made it easier to believe, because you're genuine people. You know, sometimes you get people tell their stories, and I don't mean to be unkind, but you look at their eyes and it's like there's just something different about them, and
Yeah.
it doesn't mean it's not true, but it's just harder to believe.
I think you know though. You know,
Yeah.
it's that gut feeling that you get as well.
Yeah,
So.
I think that's one of my gifts too. You know, the gift to kind of recognize BS and stuff. Always have and stuff. But
That's
anyway,
awesome.
well, I want to thank you. To everyone else, I
Thank
just want to
you.
remind you that
like,
go ahead and subscribe. Rob, you did an amazing
Yes,
job too as
subscribe.
well. But if you are not subscribed to this channel, let me just encourage you to go ahead and do that. I mean, if you go through my podcast, you're going to see we've had many great guests over the last 5 months, and we've got some great ones coming up as well. So anyway, everyone take care, and I will talk to each and every one of you later, and we'll see the rest of you, I think, on the first with Lynn, Dr. Lynn Kitay. We'll be talking
Sounded like
about
a robot.
Phoenix lights.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Audio.
Yeah.
What's that? Bye.
I just want to say
Audio.
Hold on. Go ahead, Rob.
I was looking this up because what Mario was describing of the giant orb that looked like it was emanating light. The size of that.
Bye.
The John F. Kennedy, when it was shut down in '79, described a sphere of that size, and I think there was 2 events with the John F. Kennedy, and in 2004, the Ronald Reagan in the Atlantic had a similar description that dwarfed the ship.
Yeah.
And it was a giant, like a sun hovering over the craft of the ship that completely shut them down. When this is a nuclear aircraft carrier, the power was shut off on them, completely dead in the water. So same description what Mario was talking about. So
that's why, honestly, that's why I think it's electromagnetic. I think it pulls every bit of power from everything that it's around.
It draws electrons out of the environment, because there's in the NARCAP reports, there's over 37 incidents of temporary systems failure.
Yeah.
While they're in the proximity, which seems like it's vacuuming the electrons out of the air. You know,
it really does.
And what happened to your house? That it completely overloaded the circuits because it takes in the local environment. It has to pull from the field somewhere to focus that energy into one spot. So it just stands to reason. But I thought that was interesting because it gave credence to what you described.
You know, and again, what could I have offered? What would I have to offer anything like that to warrant such a visit? I mean, if that's what it was, because I don't recollect that. I don't have a memory of that, but what was it? And I'm telling you,
sorry to interrupt, but I believe it's for you to tell your incident for others so others can step forward. That's the only explanation I can come up with why we're all visited, is just to basically teach others.
To tell others.
And you're open. You're an open soul. So
to influence humanity in ways that hopefully are symbiotic to their agendas and ours.
Yeah, symbiotic. That's a great word.
Yep.
Really
I need to also, I put this up. This is my wife, and I could not do what I do. I would not be who I am without my wife. We've been married 33 years, be 34 years on June 9th. And like you said, I wouldn't be the person I am. I wouldn't have made it as far in life as I had it, because she believed in me long before I ever believed in myself. And so, like I said, a good man is a better woman. So it's definitely true in my case. So anyway, thank you guys. Rob, I did remember that after you started saying it, because didn't we talk about that in the Darcy Weir interview? That was brought up where it actually shut down the complete, they couldn't launch any planes or anything like that. And that happened, I think, at least twice.
That's
when
I didn't even know about that.
Twice for the Kennedy and once for the Reagan.
Yeah, that's it's one of the values of having Rob on the podcast is he has all these details. I mean, this guy is detail oriented, and
that's amazing.
He's got a lot of resources as well. And so, thank you, Rob. Thank you, Mario. Thank you,
guys.
Never mind. All right, thank you, brother.
Mario.
We'll see you next time, guys.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Great to see you.
Bye.
Bye.